Guys, we have this awesome interview in here that Jonathan and Mark did with DM and Gassi. I recommend you to listen to this whole thing because they drop some bombs in here on how the endgame progression works, on how their philosophy is for unique items, what is coming in the future for Path of Exile, a lot of things, how they think about things, how they develop the game. Like there is information for 0.5, information for the future, information in general for everything. I really like this interview. It was really conversational. It was like talking like with a friend that is honest and is telling you what is going on, but also very informational.
Welcome to Tavern Talk. Thank you for having this conversation with us, talking about 0.5, the reveal you guys have showed, and some other things. Today, I don't know the number of the podcasts we're on, but it doesn't really matter. So we're going to get started with some opening questions. So I'll just pass it off to Gazi to kind of get started with the icebreaker.
Yeah, I mean, we'll just start off with obviously 0.5 being the largest patch, quote unquote, ever, right? And just curious about the nerves and excitement of levels of that leading up to the reveal trailer itself.
It was pretty crazy because the development honestly felt very scattered because they were working on so many things at the same time. Like normally we're working on like there's usually one focus, but because we're working on so many leagues at the same time, it was just really, really hard to bring together. So I would say it's honestly been one of the tougher development cycles in terms of just like getting the studio to be able to handle everything. Because like even just like a review session, we would go through one and have a look at a bunch of stuff and then be like, oh crap, we totally forgot about this total other area. Like honestly, like so many times I'm like, we've forgotten how much content is even in this damn release. We would just miss stuff, and then so yeah, like it just made it really, 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 really difficult. But also, yeah, when there's so many different scattered things, it is quite stressful because you're like, you just have this feeling of like, am I forgetting something all the time? So yeah, real tough one. But
you need an Obsidian
like, in the last
X5.
Having that extra time between the announcement and the release has actually been really, really good because we've kind of getting everything back together again. Like we can sort of see it as a cohesive thing again, and that's honestly been really, really important, especially for doing an in-game release.
Did there come a point when you guys were developing it where you kind of were like, hey, okay, we have too much on the scale, like this is where we have to stop? Like, because I remember in one of the interviews, Mark was saying he was looking at notes, and you had so many notes that you got to a point where you're like, I don't even remember making these notes. You kept cooking so much.
The problem that we had is that because we wanted to really make sure that the message was like the end game has totally changed, on some level we just had to do sort of everything. So yeah, even though we might have liked to make it smaller, we kind of honestly couldn't. Which isn't to say there wasn't like a bunch of stuff that we didn't end up cutting anyway, but still, it's been we sort of had to do something. And then like it kind of led to this fact that then we're like a month later than we would hope would be, and that kind of thing as well. So like there's been stuff like that that's kind of definitely been downsides. But overall, I think it is really important because it's just a really important change. Like it really does very fundamentally change how the in-game feels. And I was even seeing recently like there are just a lot of people who they wouldn't play the end game of PoE 2 because it just doesn't have you need something to sort of like give them some direction, and we just didn't have that. And so now I've got people who are like friends, so they've like played through the PoE 2 campaign, but they've never really been an end game player. And all of a sudden they're like, oh, okay, I actually am going to play this, like that's been a thing that I've seen. So it's something that I'm like, that I think was really important to do.
Do you think that that's primarily like the reason they didn't play the game was because of a level of confusion of like, what do I do next? Or do you feel like you didn't have enough like things in it to make it interesting? Because I remember something you come back to like pretty continually when this point gets brought up is like if an area feels like too big or like uncomfortable, that a lot of times it's an indicator of not having enough things in it.
I think that can be the case, but I do think in this situation it really was more the direction. Like you got to the end game before it opens up, and it's like, okay, well now I can just kind of go wherever, right? Like there wasn't really you do need a quest line, like you do need something there, just to give you some form of understanding what to do.
I predicted that.
I find even myself, I'm like way more interested in doing end game stuff right now than I was before. It helps a lot.
Would you say that this is a focus more of the idea of creating a getting off point, or is it more towards just creating a sense of direction? Like which one matters the most, or is it like a mix of the two?
It really is a mix of the two. Like both of those things are important. And we did, I think before we got to developing 050, we were mostly talking in terms of giving people direction. But during 050 timeline, when was it? There was a moment, I can't remember when it was, Mark, but there was some moment where we were kind of like, we realized like the problem with PoE 2 right now is that you don't know when to stop playing, and therefore you have the situation and people just get like more and more bitter about like the fact that, you know, they're just doing the same thing again. Like there just wasn't, that getting off point thing was just super important. So
that is good.
yeah,
I am
that
goal
was definitely
oriented.
an over time horizon when we realized that. And that's also been one of those things where we sort of somewhat later in development, we realized that we had to make the time it took to do the stuff shorter. Like it getting longer and longer was actually a problem as well. Like we actually had something where the amount of time it would take to finish it was too high. And that's even been something we've changed in the last like few weeks even more. So previously we kind of assumed that it would be fine to have like, I can't remember the number there was. There was probably like 25, 30 maps, something like that in each of the areas for the individual leagues. And you had to do all of those in order to get all the points for a league tree. And we were kind of like, that seemed fine at first. Like we sort of thought that would be okay. But actually the amount of time that an average user takes to do 30 maps is actually quite long. And in practice, when you're playing it, it just kind of felt like there was too much there. So then what we decided to do is make it so that when you kill the pinnacle boss, you get an extra 6 points. So basically, and you can effectively not do 6 of the maps. And then if you go into the infinite and get more keys and kill it again, you basically get 6 points. So you can effectively complete it 2 ways. You either do all the maps one by one, or you kill the pinnacle boss more times to get more points that way. And effectively, that means that the time taken to actually do one of those league trees has been reduced. And so we're really focusing on basically just making sure that it doesn't feel like it takes too long to do an individual league. So you can make sure that you the cleanup phase part does not feel annoying.
Sure. We I think we're now at the where I see it discussing with others, but I think I'm the same, where I'm gonna get to the pinnacle boss, kill the pinnacle boss, I'm gonna get fast.
Kind of cutting out a little bit there. I don't know if it's just on my end, but you're kind of cutting in and out a little bit on
me as well.
Yeah.
Is this better?
Seems better.
Everything working here, testing? Yeah, not sure. Anyway, we're at the point now where when I'm playing, and I've seen this a few other more high-end players in the office as well, I think we really wanted to get to the point where we, as a good player, you should think, okay, I'm going to get to the pinnacle boss, kill the pinnacle boss for each league, including the fortress, and then go into the infinite. There's something about wanting to do that, and when the completion time for everything was so long, there was like, okay, this is starting to feel too grindy, and I want to get out there. I want to get more pinnacle kills and all of that, and yet I'm feeling like I'm having to. I guess it's
some people had that question in my comments.
For too long, that the same thing. The original.
If the quest lines are too much and you are not actually just farming,
where it's like I want to get out there, but I can't, and I want to move to the next league, but I can't, and so yeah, it's at this. Like I think the number of towers when we first did the presentation was 8 on the fortress, and each tower meant every time you killed the arbiter, you could complete a section of maps. Now it's 5. So like we've been shortening that, and I think the number of maps, I think the total number of maps you have to run to finish the fortress, if you were to just shortest path, then go farm the infinite, is now like it's probably actually less than if you were to finish the whole fortress, which is interesting because at first I was like, surely doing the whole fortress should be less maps total, but actually just due to the fact that you don't have determinism when out there, and you're finding other things, you're on other little kind of effectively side quests, it does end up being that you kind of want it to be less maps overall because you're constantly having to do all these other things while in the infinite. So it's at this nice fine line now where it is balanced. It's feeling a lot better, whereas like before it was definitely
it can get crazy in the future with more mechanics, by the way.
Staff that were playing, they're just like, holy crap, this is taking forever. So it's in a real good spot. And then, yeah, as Jonathan said, now just even all the leagues have the same thing. So only the Fortress had the shortcutting, I guess you could say. Now every single one of the leagues has it to some degree. It's feeling really good. For sure. And yeah, hopefully we'll have to see, because it's that kind of thing as well, where when you play it a second time, you're going to have a little bit of a different feeling about it. And so we'll have to see how that comes as well once we have another league start at some point.
Is that sort of
that's usually how it...
Go on, bud. Go on.
I was just going to say, like, yeah, that's kind of like the whole cadence of playing something for the first time, because I think that point 1 was the early access launch was like one of the most exciting things ever. Everything was new. We got to experience everything. The second time we play through it, that's when we go nitpicking. Like, you know what? That area is a little too large, or that issue there. You start being, seeing the downsides of things you got annoyed with on the first playthrough, which was overshadowed by the positive things. I'm just curious if this is the reason you guys kind of want to have both of the last acts coming for 1.0 instead of sooner. Is that the same kind of reasoning there?
It's not. That isn't the reason, although that will be an advantage, I suppose. But the actual reason is just that we think that 1.0 needs to have something that like is like there's a lot of people, especially if you're talking about the sort of more casual audience, who the thing they're interested in is campaign stuff, and so by sort of by finishing the campaign in 1.0, those people are just going to be attracted to sort of make that release like a good release. And at the same time, I don't think there's like a lot of risk there for us in terms of like we know how to make an act now, if you know what I mean. Like it's not going to be one of those things where we're like, we have to make sure we're testing this because it's gonna it's gonna go off the rails or something like that. Like we know we can do it, so therefore we feel quite safe just putting something like that in 1.0. So yeah, that's kind of like ultimately it comes down to that. And also, like right now, the other thing as well is like if we hadn't have added the interludes, we'd probably be feeling pretty differently about this. But because we've got the interludes there to kind of mean that you don't have that whole thing which we originally were going to have during the entirety of early access, which is where you'd have to repeat parts of the campaign. Because we don't have that, it kind of means that like we don't have that thing dragging us down and making the early access feel worse as well. So but I think the thing that has been interesting, is like all that sort of campaign replayability stuff as well. That's been something that I'm really hoping that people will see that we've made some pretty big strides there this time as well. Like the replaying thing, the more times you replay it, the more annoying certain things get. And I saw some freaking short recently made with you like being like, oh yeah,
I honestly don't find it that annoying. It was annoying when you had to repeat it twice.
It's like, I'm gonna fix this freaking lever thing that everyone's complaining about. It's actually so
hell yeah.
Because I'm like, I don't want that to be the video that I'm seeing again. That one. So yeah,
grenades are awesome.
That was like one of the few things in the campaign replayability section I patch noted specifically, because I was like, people are going to be happy to see that thing. But there are stuff like that all around the place, right? Like we're improving a bunch of things around, and like there's just some areas that were there were some areas that were too big and stuff like that, and like sort of annoying layouts. I mean, like just some simple examples is there was like after you kill Viper, there was like a little bit of extra level after killing Viper, and now after you kill Viper, it's like directly onto the exit to the next zone, and it's just stuff like that all over the place that we're doing, just streamlining and smoothing and stuff like that. So I'm hoping Act 3 will feel a lot better now than what it has in the past. Like I think it's a pretty significant improvement. But the other one as well is like, and this one, so I had an interesting experience recently where the build that I was playing was like not good, and it's been a little while since I played a really bad build. And like the monster density and the interludes when your build is bad is actually pretty damn terrible in terms of like the ability to clear through them. Like it was oppressive. And at some point I realized, like I was playing in an area called the Stones of Searle, which is like that one with the standing stones. And I was like, at what point did we get it to the point in the interlude where you no longer have to move? Like you never use movement. Like every single thing you're doing is just attacking. And then because there's so many monsters, like you're just attacking your way from one place to another, and it just like never ever ends. And I'm like, this is actually kind of like this is a grind. Like this is actually not good. Like campaign should not be like this. And so then it sort of forced me to be like, okay, there's some serious issues here. And we actually found this one's actually a little bit. I don't like fully know that this is why this happened, but I think what happened was that there was some things about the pack density in campaign where we had like the last few areas get to a certain density. What used to be the last few areas being like the last couple of areas of Act 3, and then some of that stuff kind of continued on like deeper into the campaign than whereas it should have like dialed back again after being higher in those last few areas. And so I think that's probably what happened, but it just meant that some of those areas and but especially interlude just got ridiculous. And so that's something that I don't think I would have realized if I wasn't playing such a crap build. Because but I suspect that a lot of players are getting that experience. So that's been something I really want to try and address a little bit more. And I think that there's even some of that going on at the start of endgame as well. Like there's a few things there that that if you're got a crap build, like you don't notice it if you don't if you've got a good build, but if you've got a bad build, it can actually be really oppressive. So like another one recently, I don't know if you want me to talk about this about the whole poise thing with powerful bosses. Like, are you good for me to mention that?
Yeah, it's fine.
Yeah, so here's an example of something. So I was playing something that required freezing. It was the actually it was the werewolf freeze combo, right? And I encountered it, but as I said, my build was crap. I was not building it well. And I got to a powerful boss to get the map upgrade, and I was like, okay, normally plus 100% life would kind of like, you know, sure, it makes the boss fight twice as longer, but for some reason I was hitting this powerful boss and it made the fight feel like 3 times or worse. Like it was like really, really hard, like way harder than I expected. And it took a little while of asking around to try and find out what was going on here. But effectively, because my DPS was so dependent on getting the freeze, and we had a thing where when the boss gets life is doubled, effectively the poise thresholds, which we use for calculating, you know, like resistances to things like getting frozen, got doubled as well. It meant that effectively my DPS was getting like, maybe not halved, but, you know, something like halved due to the fact that I wasn't getting the freeze. So my damage was half. The monster had double life, so it's effectively taking me 4 times longer to kill this boss than what it would normally take. And I was literally running out of flash charges. And just
you are understanding the pain,
Papi. I've hit a progress blocker upgrading from like T1 to T2 maps here. Like this is a bad situation. And I'm like, yeah, sure, my build's crap and I could fix that, but like why? Like my crap build should be able to do this, right? Because this is one of those things where, you know, like if you're talking T1 maps, like this is something that an average player should not find as the roadblock, you know. And yeah, so it's like seeing there's still things like this around that we haven't realized. That we just need to uncover and improve, and like this is one of those things where it really is quite context dependent in the situation where you find something like that. You know, and like, and to give you another example of a random one I ran into just yesterday, is okay, so the boss in the Bloodwood, I was fighting it. And I was talking to my friend who was sitting next to me, who was, you know, like every weekend, you know, he'll come over and we'll talk about various things. And I'm like, he was like, oh, that boss health bar is really long. I'm like, well, how long should it be? Like, how long should it take to kill a boss? This kind of thing. This was the conversation. He's like, oh, for this boss, I'd say, because it doesn't have any interesting abilities at all, that it should be a lot shorter. I'm like, this boss does have a bunch of abilities. This is the Devourer. Like, what the hell? And then I realized, hang on a second, the Devourer and the Bloodwood, none of its freaking abilities are working. Like it just sits there and freaking attacks you, and it doesn't like do the moving around thing. I'm like, how did I never notice this before? Like, and like the problem here is like someone set that area up, they just forgot to put the markers in. This is what I'm assuming, right? I haven't actually looked into it, but I'm assuming they just forgot to put the markers down that control the place where that boss can move.
Thank you for the song, dude. You are awesome, Papi.
It's so easy.
Thank you so much, baby. God bless you, dude.
A higher end player. To fail to notice stuff like that, because it's one of those things you only run into when your build is crap and when it's taking you longer.
Thank you so much, brother.
And so yeah, it's so hard as a developer to notice this stuff, quite frankly. Like, and you just lose sight of it.
Thanks for the support.
So yeah, the hope is just that, you know, that we can actually find all this stuff and fix it. Like it does. It just you know, it just takes a lot of iterations to sort of actually end up noticing stuff like that.
So I want to follow up on.
You go with first.
Yeah. I want to follow up on one point you said there, because I'm actually really interested about, which is you said you realize you had a bad build. Right, and then you were feeling swarmed because you got a bad build. You're getting swarmed by mobs, right? So how do you come to the diagnosis of when it's like, okay, my build is bad, but also like part of the problem is I'm getting swarmed, as opposed to like, okay, maybe some of these skills aren't really in the position where we feel like they should be in order to clear the mobs. When do you decide that it's the content is the issue as opposed to the skill you're utilizing?
My first reaction there was to compare effectively default attacks. Because
yes, it is a great question.
So the werewolf build I was using was like
your reaction be like this skill sucks? I need to fix it.
I should have done for supports and
you can fix it. You are the dude, right?
But we just sort of like looking like the first port of call was go to you know, go to designers who know about like the, you know, getting the numbers right, and basically say like, is my build okay? Is the numbers right in terms of comparison? Like you just have to get that information, right? And like we decided, you know what, like it is like what you've got here with your build isn't good, but in terms of the underlying skills, it is okay. Like the numbers are fine. So like that was an investigation, and then there's the question, okay, like your build is bad, but you know, are your items just bad? And no, they were, you know, your items are fine. It's like, here's a look at your passive tree, and it's like, okay, so my passive tree was like bad in the way that like you could definitely be a lot better.
Gear,
I was
good gear can make a dog chicken skill good.
Taking a bit more of a defensive approach. Like I was like, if I'm the kind of person who's going to allocate way more defenses and way less damage, and just like sort of see how that goes for me, you know, that was like kind of part of what I was doing there. So yeah, like I wanted to make sure that it can be okay even in that situation. And yeah, like there's also this other situation where if you're a good player, then because you're hitting the whole screen, like the amount of monster density in a situation like that isn't necessarily, or at least like depending on a build, right? Most builds that are good have some kind of, they've got big AoE clear, right? Like they have the ability, like it doesn't necessarily matter whether there's like 40 monsters on screen or 15 monsters on screen in terms of like their ability to clear that content. So it sort of matters more for a build that doesn't have that as much, which I wasn't doing as much. So, in the situation where you're a character like that, then the only thing that's the extra monsters are really doing is just giving you more drops in experience. And so we sort of have to make sure that like we're able to make sure that that's not broken. But I do think that we don't need, quite the level of spamminess that we had, in terms of just like tiresomeness. Like even something as simple as like there's a moment between one fight to the next where your energy shield can recover. Just literally something as simple as that can be like something that can matter a little bit there. Like if it's just absolutely continuous, then there is a problem there, especially during campaign.
One other follow up about this point, then I'll pass it off to Ghazi. As you said, you were kind of purposefully taking a more defensive approach. And I'm kind of curious at what realizations you came to. Like, what was your conclusion about making the build? I'm like, I'm going to heavily, more focus on defenses this time as opposed to, damage on the tree. Like, what was your experience like with that?
Well, I mean, the thing with defense that's really hard to solve is that it's way harder to appreciate defense when you allocate it than damage. Like, it can be quite, like, it does save you, but it's really hard to know that. And, actually, I've got another thing a little bit with Runic Ward here as well, which I noticed as when I was doing this, which is that so I had some Runic Ward, and Runic Ward obviously, you get to one life, and then it saves you and so on. But that's another one of those things that's really hard to appreciate. And I'd look down at my life sometimes, and I'd notice that my Runic Ward was like halfway filled, and I'm like, okay, so at some point there I would have died, and I just didn't know that. Because I'm like flasking or whatever, so I've got like a half health at the point where I look, but yet my water's down as well. It's like I actually didn't appreciate the fact that that water saved me.
It is Sunday
so
for them, by the way, in New Zealand. They are working on Sunday.
Like an audible, like, oh, my ward, I've lost my life, my water's broken. Like we need some kind of sound to indicate that, to sort of say that like you actually got to the point where that ward helped you, so you actually can appreciate the fact that the defense worked. But then I was like, hang on a second, why do we not have a sound for energy shield breaking? Like, how have we gotten to this point and we don't have a sound like that? And then I actually looked into it, and it turns out we do have that sound. There is a thing there. It's just that because it happens when you get hit, and because when you're getting hit, there's a lot of sound going on. There's immediately this like the thing where effectively you don't hear it, right? You might as well not hear it. And what we really need is a sound that's more like when you get heavy stunned. There's like, sorry, not when you get heavy stunned. When you heavy stun a monster, there's like sort of sound that's quite distinctive that kind of cuts through everything that you sort of like learn to hear. You really need to sound like that when your energy shield breaks, because that's a moment when you should be thinking, oh shit, like you need that moment. And I think that having that audible sound, like we actually do need to lean into a little bit more of those kind of things. But like there's not like necessarily a realistic sound, but it needs to be a sound that can cut through all the other stuff that you're hearing, so that you just sort of know that you've hit that moment. And that's the kind of thing that can really make you appreciate defensive layers, is like just more of those cues. Now, I'm not sure how you do that for something like armor or like, things like that. Like there's like evasion, even like ideally you would be able to feel when you had more evasion versus not. And right now you just kind of can't. But I do think that is something that you need to do to make those defenses be more appreciated, because they do work. It's just that you often don't appreciate that they do.
I honestly think your passive tree is 100% fine. No. I don't even think it could be that much better. I think it's completely good. Your gear, completely fine. And by the way, and like because I was looking at your character and I was like, when you're clearing, you're quite tanky. It's appreciable. It's fine. And then so I was like, okay, the gear is good. The tree is fine. Like, sure, it could be better, but like, on a level that honestly shouldn't be necessary. I was like, you are defensive. Like when you're playing, your character's not just like, up and down in life all the time. It's like quite consistently, if you're on full life, and it's certainly you have decent armor, decent energy shield. It's working. But yeah, it was interesting. I think you said to me at that point, because I was like telling you, I was like, you're fine. Like, what are you talking about? And then you were like, what did you say? You said, what? Okay, if it's not my character, what do I have to change as a person in order to be able to do this content? I was like, wow. But honestly, the biggest flaw you had was just your support gems. That was the biggest actual issue.
He basically told him
do the wrong thing there. You
Simple
just
didn't
do necessarily the right thing.
It was you, not the character.
Intuitive. So there's some highlighting there, and you know, it's like because you said you followed the recommended supports for Shred.
So that was the thing that I was doing specifically, yes.
And I was like, you did, but you were also the developer that said what they were. And so you could have made it. There's a question of did you make a wrong decision as a player, or did you make a wrong decision as a developer? And there's an interesting thing there of trying to assess which of those went wrong. And so then it's kind of like, okay, sure, those fixed and made it a bit better, but we did make a pretty hyperactive set of changes based on your play experience. Because when you were like, yeah, what do I have to change as a person? It's kind of like, well, honestly, you should be able to kill this boss. You should be able to get further, and this is too hard and isn't working correctly. And then there were a number of encounters, and it was actually quite interesting to because I just watched you play for like 4 hours, and I was just like writing stuff down the whole time of just like, you know, because it is true. I don't have a relatable personal experience to what was happening there. Like I would normally be in a substantially better position to just have a bit either via more planning or again, I don't put in the wrong supports. And even when you were like, what are the right supports? I was like, oh, just search for this. And then it's like, how do you even know to look for that if you didn't
Brother, backseating Jonathan.
So there's a bunch of interesting things here where, it identifies when you are watching someone with I
put the correct supports, brother.
Be it an in-game or IRL one, I guess. I can't really. You kind of like, you know, what's actually wrong here, and it is true that it is quite hard to relate with, especially on like a personal level. So I'm quite good at when I observe. I'm quite good at seeing things that people often don't see, as well. And but yeah, it's been a really fun amount of like really looking at the early in game, really iterating on it. And I've had the same from a bunch of other developers as well, a bunch of the designers that Jonathan's also been talking to, where they're just like, it's been really fun just getting like, here's the list of problems every day
say that Jonathan sucks.
That Jonathan's run into, 100%. And then just iterating on them. And they're all so fundamental. They're all like, and I think this is something I want to stress and goes back to, it's something I mentioned to Ziggy as well with respect to like even just the defenses on the tree. Like there's just fundamentally missing things. Like, and this is a really important thing that, you know, I would say the end game not having goals is a fundamental problem, but I would go as far as the things like the balance go, the basics, the life, the PoE, all that thing that Jonathan was talking about. We honestly haven't hit the fundamentals, and this is why, and in the monster density, and this is why it's really important between 050 and release, that we're not like adding, and we can actually go, okay, like we need to just make the baseline actually the quality it needs to be.
Yeah.
And it's really, really hard to do that when you're making what we just did for 050. Like, you'll notice I don't want to say it's void of balance changes, of course, but it doesn't reach the standards of probably what people expect. And that's just because we were making all the new stuff. So hopefully now with everything in, we actually get to go back and assess all of those fundamentals about the passive tree. You start with the really core things, the base skills, the base passive tree. Like, you don't get into too much of the nitty gritty straight away and all the multipliers and combo pieces that come together of
Greed
what makes
is also a problem.
It's like really that baseline, life of monsters, damage of monsters, defenses of the player, and via the passive tree, base items. Like, I honestly think that the base items of like say weapons aren't in a good enough spot. There's just a bunch of implicits that a weapon has an implicit and its damage is penalized, and the implicit is just trash. And it's like, why is this even here? It's not interesting. It's not fun. It's just a bad weapon to find. And there's still a bunch of that. And it's just like, that's our lowest level thing. Like everything else is built on top of that, and we haven't even got that base thing entirely perfect yet. So we have a bit of a plan, and we're going to go a bit feral with it. But I really just want to make sure we're addressing all of these fundamentals now that we've got, which hopefully will make, you know, I don't think Jonathan should have to change much. I think the balance is just wrong. And I think that he should be able to kill that boss and now he can, by the way, just to be clear, we did address that immediately. But it's like, it seems like such an obvious thing. And it's like, how the hell have you not done this? But just because we've been producing so much content, like, and I don't even just mean for this patch, it's just being like, crazy developing this game.
Hey, Gladiator confirmed.
Really hard to
the duelists, they are working in the duelists in the background.
And a lot of people compare it to a lot of people compare it to PoE 1, and they're like, yeah, but the PoE 1 tree has this and this and this, and stuff like that. And it's like, yeah, but I remember iterating on that for like 8 years personally. So it's like, there's a bit of a time disparity here, like with our new philosophy. So we will be able to do it. We'll be able to do it pretty quickly. I'm not saying it's going to take 8 years, and we'll be able to get a hell of a way towards perfection, I would say. That balance is ever perfect, as I like to say. But yeah, it's going to be bloody nice now that we've got this absolute behemoth of a patch, coming to a conclusion. Not to say there won't still be stuff to fix around that, but that's part of that as well. And to be able to actually go and look at, okay, let's figure out what kind of person, what kind of build, what kind of character actually should be able to get to what point of the end game, the campaign, etc. Like, what are the mistakes people are making? What is the flaws in their builds that shouldn't be flaws? Be it the recommended gems, be it the base skill damage, be it itemization, passive tree, everything, and just getting all of that as refined as possible. Which is exciting, by the way, because I find that stuff to be some of the more fun work. So it's kind of...
What's the... Go on, Gazi.
Yeah, I was gonna say, like, listening to the both of you talking about this, it's obviously we're expecting this, but it really sounds like there's a ton of minor adjustments from the veterans players' perspective, but might be large changes for newer players' perspective that is coming to the 0.5 update that is not necessarily in the patch notes. Something I was really curious about to hear from the both of you was what portion of this update do you guys predict to make the largest beneficial impact for the player's experience? Because we heard from Jonathan talking about his situation there. Are we talking about changes in that sense, in the campaign playthrough, or are we talking about the Infinite Atlas? I just want to hear your thoughts on your prediction on the most beneficial impact for new player experience.
If you're talking about just for new players, I definitely think that it's going to be the sort of early end game, monster density, things around there, late campaign, early in game monster density, things we were just talking today. Okay, so here's another random example of a thing that we want to try and do. I hope it'll get an 050, but I think it's going to be a big deal, which is that there's another one of those realizations of I'm fighting a rare, it's got a shit ton of mods on it, and I'm like, if I just stop fighting for a second here, just put on God mode and just watch this rare, I'm just going to look at what this rare is doing right now, if I'm not killing it. And there is a fucking endless amount of bullshit spewing forth from this rare. And I'm like, there actually is no capability to have any gameplay.
That is what I've been telling you, man!
Beyond just tanking it, you know what I mean?
That is exactly what I've been telling you!
There's so much crap coming out of this thing. Effectively, my defenses have to be good enough, and there's really nothing else that I would be able to do about it. And as essence monsters in particular, I believe it was an essence monster that I was looking at the time, and stuff like that. And it's okay, we need to do something here, right? It shouldn't be that when you get a bunch of these mods on there that so right now there's all the different effects that can happen. So we call them daemons. They're the things that sit there and cast when you get the circles of lightning damage or whatever the hell it is, just various things like that trigger from a rare. Every time you add one of those, it doesn't slow down the rate of the others, and that's a thing we want to do, effectively make it so that the more of those that go on the monster, it doesn't. It's not that it that it casts the same number of them as what it normally casts. It would have to increase, but it shouldn't increase where you get 2 mods and now it's double the number of those effects, because otherwise there's just no ability to get any kind of counterplay with that. So we need some kind of thing that can control when lots of mods go on a rare, that it doesn't just turn into an absolute shit fest of random spam. And so this is another kind of one of those fundamental things to identify. And we'll try to get that info 050, but I think that one of those things is that those are the kind of things that I really do think affect new players, because there is a level beyond which of screen covering crap that you just kind of give up on it, and now it's it really is just a build check. I'm not going to dodge this, I'm not going to actually try to even do that. It's so now my build just has to be able to tank it, or that's it.
That is what we've been doing, baby.
That's once again another one of those fundamentals like that.
This came up a while back. For Essence, more so because again, it is a thing. Then veteran players are noticing a lot more, where they're okay.
I was thinking about Flickr myself with Amazon.
Silent Caverns, I think it is unique map, right? And you're okay, there's now this one monster with 6 essences, and we're what we should be doing is implementing a system where there's one or two of the daemons, as Jonathan explained it, one of the kind of more hidden skills that are outputting, the effects that are going on, they occur on a specific cooldown, and the more there are, the longer the cooldown is, and there's some whole system for it that we wanted to do. But like, that was an example of where we checked the, obviously the more extreme case, but then if you actually just come back to fundamental monster mods, like it's even a monster that only has 4 mods, for example, and 3 of them happen to be something where it's like just spamming a bunch of stuff. And the other thing is each of those just has their own independent cooldown. And so the monster, and let's say it happened to get 3 and each of those cooldowns is, say, 10 seconds. Well, it's going to do all 3 and then wait 10 seconds and then do all 3 and then wait 10 seconds. So that gets a different thing where at least you get the wait. But if it happened to be that, let's say there was a 5, a 10, and a 15-second cooldown, or some numbers like that, it's all of a sudden now it's like just skill, and then you're like, okay, when do I actually get to DPS? So it kind of varies a bit, but ultimately, at the end of the day, it's also just resulting in a bunch of just spam all over your screen. And it gets so much worse at the high end, like to the point where, and this is part of what contributes to the, like, as you said, you just need to be able to survive it. And if you can't, and it results in these things where like, I died to something, there was effects everywhere, and now I'm dead. Something happened. But honestly, again, that's just because, okay, we're talking about 3 or 4 mods. Well, you can get more than that. So obviously, right? And so all of a sudden now you've just got this barrage of onslaught of emissive, flashbangs going on your screen, and hopefully you survive. So it is a problem, but it's one of those things where it's really easy to look at the extreme cases and just be like, obviously we need to address this. And when we come up with some plan, and then you kind of go, well, it is affecting only the top end, so is it as important as these other fundamentals? But then you actually go, okay, let's look at this problem from not the top end perspective, and you're like, oh yeah, it's definitely still a problem. And so that's a good one to get highlighted, and then you can address it and address it. It turns out it just fixes it for everyone. So yeah, we're hoping to even do something about that this week specifically.
On the same topic of that is like, here's another one I just happened to notice recently as well, which was that like I was playing some maps and I realized, hang on a minute, I feel like in the last 10 maps I've run, every single one of them had a mod in it that caused curses to be going off. Every single one of them. And I'm like, so that just means that your entire experience of the map, even when you're not fighting anything, there's just like circles appearing on the screen all the time. And so I asked someone about this, and they were like, oh yeah, the reason for that is because there's a bunch of curse mods, but because they're all weighted the same as all the normal mods, it means that like the overall weighting of just any curse, if you look at it that way, is very high.
Yeah.
And so the answer is just divide all the weightings of those curse mods so they're just less common, right? So now you don't have that thing, because like I feel like it shouldn't necessarily be that every freaking map you're running has got these circles appearing like that. So like there's just stuff like that. Like there's just lots of little things like that. But I don't know why it's like, it can be hard to notice that stuff unless you're really thinking about it. And like when you're going in with the mindset of like, okay, like what are we doing to reduce the spam? It takes a little while of appreciating it as you go through, of like what is actually the cause here. Yeah, like there's a lot of things we can still do. So yeah, that is a bit of a kick that we're on right now, is the like try to reduce the spam a little bit. Ideally without sort of hurting the top end cases where people want to make sure that they're getting the monster hits that they need and all that kind of stuff like that. But I think that part of what also brought it to a head a little bit is that because the tree adds so much now, we have to be really careful with the with the stuff, because it can get out of hand pretty quick. So that's something that we have to care a lot about.
We've definitely had to reevaluate what our base levels are versus what our without like really going, okay, we just want everything to be,
the more we get patches and interviews, the more you realize that in 0.1 they just wing it, bro. They just send it, and whatever happens.
Lot larger,
and they've been trying to
master system and all of this.
Make up for it in future patches.
We've certainly had to reevaluate the base simply for that, just from a like, okay, if we had just kept the same base and added all that, then all the investment would end up having to be quite low, because you just can't have every single map being an absolute clusterfuck. So, reevaluating all of that is also helping, honestly, with that just onboarding into maps thing anyway, where you're not just like overwhelmed with like 8 things going on that you haven't even seen before. You're like, what the fuck is even happening? like, what's this purple thing here and this blue thing here and this green thing here and this yellow thing here, and you're like, you don't even know what they are because nothing's told you what they are necessarily. So I think going back to your actual question you had, which was the onboarding for new players, even though it's weird to think about new players in the case of endgame, but our hope is that they can get there. What I did see, and I've seen this with personal friends, even my brother and stuff, they got to endgame. He's like, I don't know, I just ran a couple maps and now I'm done. I guess I'm finished. So I'm hoping that they get there and stick it out and actually have that goal. Don't get overwhelmed. Don't immediately run into brick walls, and can actually play through and finish the campaign, finish the end game as if it was just a continuance of the campaign, honestly.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, there kind of doesn't necessarily need to be a break in the story necessarily so much, where they can just be perceived as the same thing ultimately.
It's funny that you mentioned that, because one of the topics we wanted to cover in this interview was about the Fortress and Endgame Atlas. And one of the initial questions we had there is to talk about the Fortress. You talk about onboarding people to the Endgame, right? And the Fortress itself, it has its areas inside the Fortress. They're sort of pre-juiced, and the Fortress is required for gaining your Atlas passive points, and also has some pinnacle bosses in it. Like, is this area what you envision players to head to first when they go out there, clear it out in its entirety, then go out to engage with league mechanics? Or is it intended to be your sort of first endgame focused type of content, but you can deviate away from it? And the follow-up to this would be, is this supposed to be an extension of the campaign to be sort of a tutorial of the endgame before people are expected to go to the Infinite Atlas?
Well, there's a few things going on here. So number one is I do expect that the Fortress is going to be the first in-game system that people engage with. It doesn't have to be, but I think that it will be. And that's seen by the fact that it's the first quest we give you, and it's kind of like the largest visible thing going on, right? So the very first thing you get is there's a tower that pops out, and Duyani's like, hey, go do that. And that's 3 maps away, right? So it's guaranteed the tower is the 3rd map that you do, assuming that you head in that direction. And then it's 3 or maybe 4 maps more than that until you get into the Fortress. So it's pretty, we're onboarding you pretty easily into that thing. So I suspect a lot of people do that. And yes, the pre-juicing is definitely a nice thing, because the nice thing we get to do there, by the way, is that so in the Fortress, it's not most of the maps, but it's a very large percentage of them, because you can pick where you go. You effectively get pre-juiced maps, but the nice thing is it's one mechanic at a time. When you get those mechanics in those maps, it's because it's at the start, you have an allocated Atlas point, so it's not happening all the time. You get a situation, you get to experience the feeling of okay, here's what it would be like if I had a bunch of wisps, and here's what it would be like if I had a bunch of strongbox and that kind of thing. You get to sort of experience that right away. But yeah, as I said, one at a time. And then as you go through the Fortress, you're obviously adding more of that content that once you've experienced it to your maps, you get to kind of juice it more yourself. And so by the time you're done with the Fortress, you're going to have the not necessarily, probably not the full Atlas tree, because I don't think that you're going to just grind out every single map in the Fortress. I expect the much more likely situation is that you pick a path through the Fortress that gets you to the quest goals. You allocate, I don't know what it would be. What do you reckon the percentage of the tree?
Last stream that people were going to do it that way when we read the patch notes.
Of it or something, maybe. Something along those lines. You probably get a third of it if as you make your way to the maybe half. It sort of depends on how long it's taking you to get up those map tiers and so on. But I'd say a third is kind of
half was more what I was thinking, for sure.
Yeah. But yeah, sort of half to a third, the third half, something like that.
I really need to piece, guys.
So by the time you got to that point,
I have this headset and I can hear them, but I will
all the other
go
objectives.
and
I sort of suspect that'll be most people's general experience, and that's not supposed to take too long. It's supposed to be a relatively achievable goal. And yes, it is effectively tutorializing the endgame as well, because then you've got the quest version of the pinnacle, which is hard. Don't get me wrong, it's not easy, but definitely not. But it's something that you would expect someone to be able to do if they're taking it somewhat reasonably. So yeah, it is something that probably would expect to do. Now you can go and do the other quest lines if you want, but the one thing you will run into is that you're not allowed to do I believe the lieutenants, whatever this kind of the pre-pinnacle is before you've got to map tier. It's 11, I believe. Mark, is that correct? Map tier 11 is what you have to do.
Generally 14.
14. Sorry, 14. Yes, that's right. So you map to 14. So what that means is that Yeah, if you do that as your first one, and you're a new player, so you don't know how to go through the tiers quickly, it's possible that you'd run into that bottleneck at some point if you just did one of the league trees first, and then have to sort of tear up before you went on. Whereas if you do the fortress first, you're obviously going to be T16, or T15 probably, I suppose, if you're not doing the corrupted stuff, and so therefore you're going to have the maps that you need to be able to do those other ones like all the way to the end very quickly. So yeah, I'd expect most people to do Fortress first, in most cases.
Part of the reason for that T14 thing, because I suspect it'll come up and people might be like, why is this gated behind a level? Like, why is it? Like, let me just do it. Is that we don't want the pinnacles. So obviously there's a quest version and a non-quest version, right? The non-quest is harder. That's what you do afterwards. Drops better loot, right? That's
the quest version, basically.
Where it still drops loot. It's not just given nothing. It is still a fixed level, and we wanted all the pinnacles to be at the pinnacle, right? Around tier 15, tier 16 difficulty, right? So you'll generally find they're about level 79, whereas the farm ones are like level 82. Now that doesn't mean a lot, but it's just, you know, obviously item level of drops, and then obviously, you know, whatever custom difficulty we want to do at those level thresholds. However, because often the pinnacles are not using traditional waystones, as in they don't have a tier on them. We have to gate the thing directly before them to be the difficulty that is the closest. Like, for example, let's say you got to tier 11 maps, you killed, say, Tulanesh, and then you got the Twisted Domain key, and so tier 11, and then you're jumping to level 79. Like, the difficulty jump is just going to be insane. And so it's like, well, you know, I'd rather gate that boss to be literally just one step before the Twisted Domain, so that if you do it, you earn the key, you're probably ready to do it. Like, you don't have to like now go and waste your key.
I like that. I like that. Because sometimes you don't want to try. So you say, no, they are going to destroy me. I am going to get ready.
But it is important
you want to do it right away.
When they kill those penultimate bosses, that they are probably ready then. That is their proving grounds to say, okay, you can try the pinnacle now. And if we have those be too early, yeah, people are just going to be like, okay, what the hell? This difficulty jump is out of control. And then they'll fail. They have to go do a bunch of stuff. It'll feel bad. Or they might just be like, nice balance, you know, thumbs down. So, you know, it's... I think that the lesser evil is definitely to have the gate. There are a few other ways to do this. But the other thing I didn't want to do is have it that... Let's say you did them in a different order. Like, let's say you... let's say it was tier 11, as we said, the restriction on Tulanesh. If you then, and let's say Twisted Domain was T12 difficulty instead of the 14 and 15 that I have them at. If you did it breach first and did it naturally, it'd probably feel fine. Now, if you go and do the whole fortress, you get all the way to T15, you kill the Arbiter, you do that whole quest line, and then you go and do breach. Well, now it's just tier 11 and tier 12, and you're going to be like, well, that was a joke. What the hell was that? And so that's also
that has been happening with the Arbiter right now.
Obviously high level, and so I think that's also bad.
By the time you find the 3 fragments, the Arbiter
why
sucks.
I want to make sure the penultimates are T14 and the ultimates are around, and the quest ultimates are 15, and then the farm ones are a few levels higher. And there are, I understand, there's a few different things you could do here. You could be like, oh, as you complete each, the other ones level up, and as you know, there's all this kind of stuff. But I don't really love doing that. I think it's quite fun to just get to that boss. You get to literally the pre-capstone of the league, and it's like, all right, now get to tier 14, and you're like, oh shit, yeah, I'm going to go do that. When I come back, I'm going to come back and mess it up and hopefully get my loot, or, you know, whatever, or just fail, whatever the case is. But hopefully you get to kill it and get your loot. But yeah, I don't know. It worked out, but yeah, I understand. It's been a bit of a conversation in the office where people have wanted it one way over the other and been a bit back and forth about it, and had the levels based on the distance from the start and all kinds. And I just think that what we've landed on is certainly the best situation we have of all. But I suspect it's a question that's going to come up. So I thought clarifying it might be a little bit useful.
Did you guys do any changes to the earlier levels of the waystones? Because I know in one video, there was a video I was watching where a guy was mapping out and saying the earlier tiers of the waystones are higher levels now, etc. How do you feel about the earlier level curve of the waystones? Has that been fundamentally changed though? Or are you guys okay with the positioning of it currently?
As in level 65, then 6 and 7, then 8?
Yeah, exactly.
6, 7, motherfucker.
There were some changes to monster effectiveness that happened.
I mean, again, we've done balance.
There you go with the fucking chat.
So
the
it's
6,
what do the
7
numbers
shit.
even mean is kind of a question in itself, you know, like in general, I think a common problem people had is that the difficulty difference between the maps wasn't significant enough, and so it was like you just kind of just climb and climb and climb.
Right. Yeah.
We've done some changes around that. We went very extreme at the start of this development cycle, and we've now come back on it substantially. Not to say there isn't still a larger difference than what's currently on live. So yes, the difference between a T1 and 15 on live is less than the difference that will be in 050.
Okay, that is good.
As in it gets harder as you climb the progression.
Nice.
That being said, a lot of that was also done through, because we've changed what the map mods give as well. So they have, I can't remember what the exact bonuses are now, but for example, a subset of the mods do grant effectiveness.
Not we by me or the community.
Life and XP. And then, but what we tried to do is that every single mod on a map was something you actually were like, oh yeah, okay, this is rewarding, I want this. Whereas there were some that were a bit hit and miss before, for sure. So we've tried to do that, and so we've changed some of the outcomes given. But just now, by rolling mods on maps, you'll notice that things, because of the effectiveness, for example, that monsters can get harder, but at least then you can kind of control it, which is better than just, okay, we've moved the brick wall from here to here or whatever. You know, it's like not a great change that we made, but yeah, I would say it's not too far off what it was at a baseline level. But again, that's where also then ideally, when we do have things like difficulty curves like that, it's something that's in the player's control, not like, you know, otherwise, again, like let's say Jonathan's build here, he's like, okay, I'm struggling in very early waystones, but like, and I raised the question to him, I was like, okay, but let's say we did this change here. It sounds good. You'll get to your tier 3 or 4, maybe 5 maps, but then you're going to hit a wall there as well, right? So it's about making sure that we do changes that aren't just like, okay,
and yes, they needed to increase the difficulty.
You're going to quit 30 minutes later.
You feel like you are climbing. Sometimes you skip this, like you go from tier 1 to tier 5 to tier 10.
Technically, that's better, I guess.
They are too easy, right?
It's still bad. So, you know, but it's I know that there's a lot of people who really wanted it to be that the difference in difficulty in tiers is quite significant.
Exactly.
There's a bunch of people who don't necessarily. We tried it. It wasn't good. So having it more as you get more of the tree, more multi-choice, you get the Atlas Masters, and that being fully like agency controlled is definitely a better world than just like inherently every tier is significantly harder than the last, or some sort of more extreme jump like that. So anyway, let's try it and test it.
Let's talk about the Atlas Masters then, because I'm very curious. There's 2 fundamental changes with the Atlas tree currently coming up in 0.5, one of which is you can basically max out the entirety of the tree. I know there's notables you can change, and that's kind of how you're doing the player agency on the Atlas tree. But also the Atlas Masters are the other like fundamentally new, and you call them like ascendancy classes for the Atlas tree, which is kind of an interesting way to put it. So what are the Masters enabling you to be able to do that was something you couldn't like be able to put on the tree? Like, why Atlas Masters, and what are
this is a great question. Love this question.
So there's a couple of things going on here. So I think one of the things that's really important to talk about with that is that why the old tree was a concern. So effectively, the old tree wasn't allowed to have anything on it that could affect content that you could see that you were going to get in advance. And the reason for that is because you'd just respec before you do it, and then be having to respec all the time. And we wanted to get to a situation where you know, like you didn't feel like you needed to make those changes all the time.
Exactly.
And
that doesn't exist in PoE 1 because
water down the bonuses we could
you
give.
do your map, right? Not like the Infinite Atlas.
Originally, what we were saying is that we want to have it so that the customization that there is doesn't require like so much cognitive overload in terms of doing it. Like, and what I mean by that is like, okay, so the important thing to respec was like, you know, like various more sort of keystone-y type things. Like there's a bunch of other bonuses, but like the stuff that kind of defines like what is interesting about what you're doing is really more about those keystone things. So like if we can bring all those key choices together in one place, it's going to feel a lot less threatening when you want to change them. And so now you've got like effectively like a nice little menu on the side of the thing of like what one of these do you want to be playing under. And then after that, we were like, okay, we want to do some kind of thing where like in PoE 1, you've got like the 3 specs that you can do for your Atlas tree. And I've never kind of liked that because like, I don't know, like
I do like
how
it.
do I just describe like why I don't sort of like that kind of stuff? It's like, it feels like it's adding even more complexity.
No,
So
it is not.
then I was
It
like,
is
okay,
quality of
is there a
life. Give it to
way
me,
that we
PoE2.
can get the idea of having 3 specs, but like not have it feel like something that feels like it adds complexity, but instead make it feel thematic and cool. And so then the idea of like, well, what if each spec was like a character, and they're like, you know, like this is the stuff that they're, you know, that they're doing, and then it feels like when you're changing between them that you've got it's just a more interesting and sort of more thematic way of achieving something like that. And I think that's actually worked pretty well. And then, funnily enough, it kind of ended up feeling a little bit like what we have in PoE 1. I can't remember what the name of it's called, but you know, the way that you can select a thing when you run a map. I think, yeah. Anyway, so yeah, like it just has a sort of a cool feel to it like that. And because you're allowed to select between these things like that, then we can have bonuses that you would want to change between before you run a map, because you can effectively just have like, okay, this is when I'm running this content, this is the master that I'm using. When I'm running that content, this is the master that I'm using, and you kind of like decide those kind of choices up front, and then it's just like one click to change between them. So now then, yeah, we put all those bonuses of like, and even in this case, we're even experimenting with having bonuses that are going to apply to the league that we're actually running right now. So there are bonuses that apply to the Runes of Alder on there, and like we feel like it's okay to do that when it's like the sort of separate thing that's on the these masters, where we didn't feel like we were comfortable doing that on the Atlas tree before. So yeah, I don't know, like it's a different concept of delivery that allows us to do a certain thing, and in this case, the particular thing that it is yeah, like content that responds to like things that respond to things that you can see that are going to happen. So like I see that I'm going to run this type of map, it's going to have this type of content in it, I select this master, which is going to synergize with that.
Okay. The league mechanic trees, when I was watching the review, one bit of confusion, like I know I at least myself was confused about this, so I was hoping some clarity. Are you actually able to max out the entirety of each one of the league trees? Okay, so what was the decision behind we wanted to make it where you max out the trees and, you know, entirely also in the league mechanic portion of it?
So for the, I mean, it's the same exact argument for the regular tree, right? Like it's, we just think that it's important that for the types of bonuses that we can do, it means that we can do a bonus like, you know, now when you kill this boss, it's going to have these additional, you know, these additional features or drops, something like that. There's like stuff like that you just wouldn't be able to do normally, because yeah, you'd be like, okay, well, I'm not going to have that allocated when I'm doing this content because I instead have this other thing. If you allocate all of them, we could just do those types of bonuses, and I think it just makes them more interesting. But yeah, so then once again, you've got the multi-choice nodes that are there to control the like, do I want to have this league be like this or like that? The multi-choice nodes effectively serve as the those decision points.
But there are things
for example,
that don't have
like,
opportunity
you can
cost.
have
I am seeing you there in the
that
chat.
specifically enhances the difficulty and or drops of the pinnacle boss for that league. You can have one that applies to the lieutenant. You can have, and so yes, before obviously you'd have to then go, I'm about to do the pinnacle boss, or you save up a bunch of keys and then you allocate those nodes and then run them all, and then you unallocate those nodes when you go back to farming. So even with
that makes sense, but at the same time,
variety of bonuses were.
For example, they showed in the temple that there is a node that gives you that runes can be upgraded to tier 4, like, and there is no choice. Okay, everybody's going to have it. What is the point then? Just make runes upgrade to tier 4 without the point. Like, okay, it is like, I don't understand that mentality.
Now or this later. Obviously,
there is no opportunity cost.
Pinnacle boss when you're like, you know, first starting out. Not that it's at the start of the tree anyway. And so, yeah, you're generally going to want to spec into that stuff later regardless. And often in those cases, it's even blocked behind killing the pinnacle boss to start with, where it's like, okay, I can't allocate these until I kill the pinnacle for the first time. And then you can go and fill them in. And then when you do the farm, you can get the full loot. But it does create this just like really cool sense of progression of like, you're just like really evolving the loot, and there kind of isn't really a wrong choice. You're not like so scared about whether or not you're allocating A or B and whether or not it's going to be the right thing. And so you can just do it with a lot more freedom, a lot less like, you know, fear of missing out of something. You can But there's still a little bit of that, like thinking about the choice and the ordering and which way you're getting it. But it just feels so much less complicated and something you can just fuck up. Of course, that raised the concern, and Jonathan mentioned it, where you then lose your build per se. And this is something we've talked about a little bit, but like this is where the Atlas Master circles in. It's like, we need a system that is your build, but we need that to not be like 150 passives. It needs to be something quite clean like an Ascendancy class, hence kind of Atlas class. It's like, here's your end points you get on a quite small tree, and it's effectively like, okay, as he said, is boiling down the actual key decisions of how things behave, like meta level decisions, as opposed to just like X% increased something. It's just like a little bit of thing. It's like very game changing, like, enables a mechanic or disables another, gives you, as I said, things that reduce the number of revives you have, but increase the loot. And it's like, oh, do I want to risk that? It's like much more meaningful decisions all over the Atlas Masters. And because we can have multiple, because you can turn them off and enable them at will, and because it's not like just giant tree of overwhelmingness, it's quite easy to go, okay, I understand what this is going to do. I understand I can try it. I can just turn it off. I don't need to have like multiple respec systems in order to do it, be it gold or some orb. And then I can just go and change it. And then maybe when I'm ready later, I'll turn it on again. But the other thing it allows, and I like this, which is, of course, it allows us to make new ones in the future. If we have new characters and new Atlas Masters, maybe we sub one out, add another, you never know how these things go. Maybe we do a thing where we, move what's on class A onto class B and some of B onto C, and, you create different combinations of the classes and what they specialize in. Obviously still remaining thematic, because that's a thing that we want to stay bound to. And so there's a lot more like flexibility here in terms of changing, removing, adding, doing a bunch of like cool stuff with just like creating new builds where you can create an entire new in-game meta just by mixing up those classes. And you haven't had to change this entire 600-point Atlas passive tree kind of level grade thing where you're like, okay, we can create so many new metas with like five changes, and that's it. You just move this here, this here, this here, this here, this here, and it's like, oh, entire in-game meta changed. Now, that's if we want to do that. We don't have to, but that can be a cool level of shake-up that keeps in-game feeling way fresher and whatnot, and we haven't had to add an entire new system to do it. So, yeah.
Yeah, on the topic of endgame meta and stuff like that, and the player agency control of not just the Atlas Masters, but also the multi-choice nodes we have on the Atlas tree itself, is something you brought up. I believe it was you, Mark, on the Q&A with Siggy D. Was that something that you don't have in PoE 2, but you do have in PoE 1, is the ability to respond to market changes by targeting different types of drops. So
okay, the reality question.
In the topic of combating inflation, which has been mentioned, as well as price stabilization, where you can make those choices to, hey, this is lacking a supply in the market or whatever. And then you can choose to say, well, I'm going to do that farm. And then maybe the market changes, and now the next mechanic is going to be the most lucrative, if you will. And one of the questions is this one of your implementation to help combat your issues with rarity affecting currency and combating inflation in general?
I did a video about that.
It is 100% good at that. And, go for it, Jonathan.
Well, I was going to basically say exactly that, right? Like we are trying to make it so that not only do you have things with the Atlas Masters, but you've also got things with the like which league you're focusing on. Like Ritual now being a much bigger source of uniques, for example. Yeah, if like you think, like we do want the idea that if things are in the market
I already addressed this in a
way, you feel
20-minute
like
video, by the way.
Going to doing a different league, being a thing that matters more is, I think, pretty important. So that was an explicit goal. Like let's try and make it so that we can get that. Now I don't know whether that's going to have a huge effect or not, but it was one of the things we noticed that was different about PoE 1 vs 2 when we were talking about this kind of stuff.
I explained it at length already.
Let's add that ability a little bit more.
But like to go further into that again with the response and player agency side, and I don't actually know if we made this. It was in one of my mini spreadsheets at some point. But like, let's just say Ritual gives uniques, which yes, we've made that change. And let's just say that there was a master who had somehow an occult, or let's say a multi-choice, and it just said all the uniques offered by Ritual are now currency. And you could, with a click of a button, go click. All right, now I run rituals, and I'm just getting currency instead.
Confirm. That is happening 100%.
Not say that's necessarily a thing. I can't remember. But that's the level of thing where it's like, well, why not allow someone to change that? Now, one might be quantifiably better than the other, but that's somewhat market dependent and somewhat what you need for your gear, for your build, your character, and whatnot. But that is a level of a literal just click one button, click another button. Like if that's the thing you want to do, that we will now be able to do with this, where you can completely transform what you're farming by just the click of a button. And you can do that for many of the different leagues where you're like, okay, well, I want to target this instead of that, or I want to specifically turn off A and B because C gives more currency, or I want to, I'm farming more bosses, so I want to make the bosses do this at the cost of something else. There's just all kinds of different things that you can do. And
between
it's so profitability and fun, and simple, which is awesome. So I do expect less profit if it is more fun. I do expect people to be those who care about it to be dynamically responding their builds to the economy, which I know a lot of people care about, myself included, right? That's what you're going to do. So what you have as a day one build might not be your day two build, might not be your day three build, entirely just due to I want to make the most amount of wealth from an economical standpoint, as opposed to necessarily like what's best for your character, because I understand getting wealthy is often what's best for your character. So, it will happen, almost certainly. And it's not going to take a whole bunch of gold and unshaping orbs and everything to do it. So that's good.
That's a good sign.
I know you guys put, I think it was in the patch notes, you guys said you put like Exceptionos and Fracturing Orbs are on the Atlas tree now as well, correct?
Mm-hmm.
I think that's correct. One more example of it.
That can be seen as taking something away, which obviously it is to some degree. But what it's also allowing you to do is be exposed to it, the fact it exists at all, which is kind of cool because you can see the node, you can go, what the hell is that? And you can click the keyword and you're like, oh, I see what this is. That's cool. So you're like,
oh, which is quite cool. Like you know those mechanics exist because the tree tells you about them.
Exactly. A new player, what the fuck is an exceptional item?
We'll move on and talk about the league mechanic. Destructive play is like kind of one of my favorite ways to farm in PoE 1, right? And you were talking about the more focus on unique map bosses. It's not really a current strategy in 0.5. Like you're not really going and targeting down, map bosses currently. Is this something you expect? I've seen you've been given love to unique map bosses, farming strategy so far, the way from what we've seen on the Atlas tree. So are you guys trying to make that into a potential strategy?
Should ideally be one.
It should to some degree, for sure. I mean, it depends if you think of it as the map
boss. It is not.
Versus,
that is a problem.
I would say,
well, let's see what happens in 0.5.
Circles, being able to invest in that and do stuff with that is a way of getting more boss fights. I understand it's not the map boss. There are definitely ways to... Well, I guess you got the Overseer's Tablet, of course, which is a way of trying to be more boss-centric. I get it's not quite the same as what you're mentioning, which... More
Look at that question. Will you ever do a collab with Diablo 4?
But it's something that we're trying. There's a little bit of like, okay, and Jonathan said this to me literally today, which is that
but that is the thing.
Fighting multiple bosses at once is almost always worse than fighting one at a time. Like you just lose that cohesion, right? You lose that combat feel. Now it can be, you can have a twinned fight that is designed and they're a bit tag teamy and all that, but it often isn't good to just spawn a bunch of bosses on you all at the same time. Because it just implies, it's one of that same thing again, where now you just have to have the defenses to not insta-die because you can't tell what's happening. So adding more bosses is something that Summoning Circle mechanic tries to do, and there are other ways to do that for sure. There's like a new type of Delirium mirror that spawns a cloned boss from a map. So like we want to definitely spawn more bosses, but I don't want to just spawn like 6 bosses in a room all together and just let you deal with it, right? It just, the combat just goes out the window.
Which we do have in the right of the nameless, but in the right of the nameless, we do offset them from spawning. Like they don't all just suddenly spawn to start.
Okay, like this clarifies things because
they're not like one at a time, but they do stagger so that like you've got time to potentially kill the boss first, and then
that clarifies a lot.
Ideally, it's kind of like like it's a bit of it's a tough fight, but you're not it's not just like 5 bosses enter a room with you.
That being said, we have a bit of work to still do on getting ritual combat to be a bit better, right? Like it is it is one of the things. Like, I mean, obviously, getting that many monsters in a bit of a claustrophobic situation can just be a bit of a mess, and so that's still something we are going to work on, is getting that combat to be a bit better as well, just as a thing to hopefully do between 050 and release. But yes, in that context, definitely staggering them is the play, because yes, what the hell is fighting 5 bosses, and not now just 5 bosses in the boss arena, you're talking about 5 bosses in this little circle with a bunch of rat tornadoes or something going around. You have no idea what's going on. So we'll try and make that as clean as possible.
All right, well, let's talk about the Runes of Aldor then, this season's league mechanic.
Elemental
now,
swap.
One of the major, sticking out points is obviously Runic Ward. I don't think many people saw that one coming. That was a bit of a surprise when I saw that one. So what was the thought process of coming to the conclusion that, okay, we need another defensive of some sort, and this time we're going to put it under life? Like, that's pretty unique. So how'd you come to that point?
Exactly. Normally, life is your last
maybe started. Did it start with the skills first or the ward first? I can't actually remember which way around it was, but I feel like it might have been the skills. And we were talking about like what resource could we consume. I mean, it came together in one conversation, but I'm trying to remember exactly like which way around it was. But the skills and the runic ward were definitely designed together, like in terms of what that, like we sort of knew that we wanted something. And so, okay, for a while we've wanted to have, it's like you start with having it so that all of the skills are limited to weapon types, but then after that, you then break the rule and actually have the stuff that goes between the weapon types. And so we knew for a while we wanted to have, skills that can work across, so you can do some interesting stuff, and it like expands the universe and what builds are possible by quite a lot. So it was just a question of like, what can the restriction be so that it's like to make it so that there's something there that we can have that still sort of limits it. Because we were talking about how if we're doing skills like this, we didn't believe that something like mana would actually necessarily work for the type of skills that we want to do, where it's like sort of unrestricted like that. So then we're like, okay, if we've got another resource and like we don't really want to do life, and then we talked about like, do we make it like Vaal skills where you've got like the soul thing? We kind of didn't like that either. And
I don't like
I'm
the
not sure
soul
exactly
system
how
with
we ended
Vaal
up
skill
with runic ward as the description, but I did like the fact that you've got something that's a hybrid defense and offense, and you can kind of scale that depending on what you do. So yeah, that it ended up pretty well, and I'm enjoying playing with it as well. Like I do now, especially that there's a proper sound when you run into it. Like you do know that it's saving you. So that's been pretty nice. So I'm a big fan of that. But ultimately, yeah, it came from the skills first, I believe, of like wanting to have a new resource that can power something like that.
Okay.
You mentioned.
I honestly can't remember the conversation, but yeah, we started with like, well, PoE 1 has ward, and we're like talking about things that we could do that are of Kalgurin theming, and we ended up going, it was just like, we're not really satisfied with how it works. Like fundamentally, it's like very niche, it's very endgame, it relies on all these unique mechanics to actually be good, and we need something that's fundamental to the campaign here.
Please comment, tell them to hire me.
Can help everyone.
Shooting my shot.
And then we went through all life. As we do, we just have our meetings of design rants, and we went through many iterations, and somehow we ended up what we have, and I think it is a significant upgrade over if we had just copy pasted from what was in PoE 1 there, it would have not been anywhere near as good. So it's quite satisfied with how that ended up. But it is always hard to forget these frantic conversations we have, but we're just like, it's honestly like sometimes it's 30 minutes and you have like 500 iterations, and sometimes it's several hours. And
what's the audio broken?
But easy
it's
to
fine
remember
now.
Those ones. This was one of those short and fast, snappy, ruckus conversations for sure.
Did I fix it? Is it still broken?
People find use for
static
ward skills and like.
I don't know what the fuck causes that, man.
Will be the case. Like we've made them.
It happens sometimes.
There's quite a few ones that are general enough as well, and a surprising number. Gazi will be happy to hear about that, I guess. But yeah, there's quite a bit going on there. The one I'm using on my current build is.
Is my voice fine?
Stream it was a mark, but then we decided that we liked it as a curse better. So it's a curse that you apply to the monsters, and when they take a bit of damage,
I don't know why that happens from time to time.
It pushes all the monsters away. And if you've got large monster density and you use it on a pack, like the
and
monsters
I think it is only when I use the headset.
When
I have speakers, it doesn't happen.
So I'm enjoying that one, and hopefully we don't need to nerf it because I'm enjoying it. But that's the one that I'm using at the moment. But yeah, there's quite a lot of interesting ones. And I suspect that what I'm hoping is that there might be some like ward only builds even at endgame, which I think will be interesting. Like we'll try and build one in the office, and maybe we'll even do a video on it to see if we can do like a ward only character, just to see how that goes. But the skills are primarily designed to be used as sort of like, extra things that you can use on
like
on your
Eldritch Battery, Chaos Inoculation,
about the league mechanics
and full running
I
war.
was re-listening to the Ziggy D Q&A while I was prepping, and Mark, you said that you thought you could get up to 22 rare mob modifiers potentially when paired with the expedition when doing the Rune of Aldor, right? So one of my questions for you is this kind of intended to be a strategy, sort of like, I don't know, like the Alva Temple, for instance, where it's like, okay, you can farm it for specifically what the drops are, but also like it can be a juicing mechanism where we're building this. So another way to play it is you do this actually just to juice the rare mobs themselves, and you're actually farming the mobs for the drops by adding more and more modifiers on.
That was the intention, yes, that both are a viable option. Now, the example I gave there is obviously the extreme.
Of course. Yeah.
Like, you're not going to have that happen every time, for sure. But I do want it to be a strategy for sure, especially now that the mods don't display all vertically down the screen. Those specific mods don't. There's just like a little line of runes under the monster's life bars. And yeah, but my hope is that there is a strategy at endgame. Obviously, it's a relatively high-end strategy, where once you are using logbooks and doing those grand expeditions, as we've called them. I don't know if there's an official name yet, but that's what
it is. It was
big old expeditions that you are going thinking, notes. Okay,
they are no longer logbooks.
Some of the remnants,
you're
like, okay, I want this chase reward, and on others where you're like, nah, I don't really care too much about this and that. Like, I think I can push the monsters to be more valuable than the things that are offered by them. That you're actually thinking, okay, I'm going to try and pick the highest variety of different runes possible, so that you pass them along and try and get as many remnants as possible in the dynamite chain. And then you just like, okay, obviously each one then passes them on. So you're going to get every monster. The first one will be like, okay, pretty standard rewards. Second one a bit more. Third one a bit more. Fourth one a bit more. It's like, how long can this dynamite chain go? How many remnants can I get in it? And then you get to the point where you're just like, all right, like, what am I actually even fighting now? That's the hope, is that there are still people. And again, because you can control what the mods are, what the rewards are, what the where the bombs are, the order of them, you can control the difficulty and rewards entirely as you please. One other thing we've changed with expeditions, by the way, which I think has been a significant upgrade, though a semi-controversial internal one, but
it's not that rare to find.
I think it's way better.
Which is the new pinnacle was for expedition.
Which is when you set a dynamite, you got your dynamite chain. When the first one goes off, you have to kill a certain number of the monsters before the dynamite will continue. So what would often happen is that a fast build, when doing the logbooks,
dude, I have to piss again. I have drunk like
you could just kill as you're going. And what some people did is they'll just detonate the entire chain and then just like clear backwards almost. And what some people would do is just clear with it, but effectively now they're not even seeing the bombs. Like the bombs have all detonated off screen and they're just following the chain of minimap icons, clearing everything. Yeah. So now, like, it's like finish the encounter, next bomb goes off, finish the encounter, next bomb goes off, finish the encounter, next bomb. So you're following it, seeing the detonation, seeing what's emerging, doing the fight, and you're following along. It just feels so much smoother. Though I know that there's
more, by the way, like it's way better.
I agree. I think it's significantly better, but I know it immediately had people going, but I like to just detonate the whole thing and then just wait ages and then clear it all, going backwards or whatever. And I was like, wow, too bad, because the pros outweigh the cons here, IMO. But it is just significantly better.
One couple other changes I noticed was 10 runes instead of 8 in the patch notes, right? I think the reveal said it was like 8 cap, and I think in the patch notes it said it was upwards of 10.
I think the reason for that is because there's a that might have been me accidentally disclosing a hidden thing that was supposed to be a hidden thing about how there's like a secret thing that you can get up to 10. I think I might have accidentally said that. Like, I think the normal limit is 8.
Okay.
But
there's like a bespoke 10 length and 9 length one. They're not like traditional. It's something that when you find, you're gonna be like, what the fuck is this kind of thing?
Yeah. So there's like, yeah, that was probably just my bad, just like looking at the table and being like, okay, here's the maximum one being 10. Like, there's probably a few things I accidentally disclosed in the patch notes that were intended to be hidden, but it's fine. We'll just we'll see.
How do you?
By all means, we don't mind.
Yeah, spoil it here. How do you actually decide what you want to like leak or show in the review and what you don't? Like, I mean, that's got to be kind of a hard decision on, you want to keep enough hype going, right? Like, you want people to know some stuff's coming, be excited. Like, you got to tease Mageblood's coming. You can't tease what it is, right? So, like, how do you decide what makes the cut on the teaser and what you want to be, like, discovered, like, the hidden ascendancies, for instance, like you did with Abyssal Lich?
I don't know, really. It's sort of hard to decide, but, like, there are certain things... Well, okay, like a random example
leaking
is
anything,
like,
by the way.
not to, like in the patch notes we said there are 3 barracks rings. People are going to make some assumptions about what that might mean. Like there are things like that that we're just like, this, like, in some ways, like it can be obvious to people what the hidden things are, but that can be its own form of excitement, because now you're going to be asking, well, how does that work? What do you do? And the way that does work is quite hidden. So, we'll have to see whether people do that. I know Jeff actually was saying to me, he's like, as a player, I would never find this. So hopefully people do actually end up discovering that. But all it takes is one, and then everyone will know. So, there are secrets like that around. But yeah, I don't know. It just like we want to make sure that there's just enough things where it feels like people, have found something. And actually, there's that other whole system we didn't tell people about. Oh, I'm not even going to mention it. No, screw it. There's a whole bunch of like, I would say there's more like.
That is also said.
I don't even know what he's talking about.
You do know what I'm talking about. The one that's the most ridiculous.
You have to tell me afterwards, because obviously
the one that's the most ridiculous.
Why wait?
The one that's the most
hidden thing that they don't know what the fuck they're talking about.
Hidden surprises on this patch that I feel like it's kind of okay to disclose a lot of things, because there's quite a lot more of them. Like, I feel like there's probably more hidden, random, weird stuff in this patch than we've probably ever done. I don't know if you'd agree with that, Mark, but it seems like it to me.
It should be. I'm a huge advocate for pushing for like, and I just declare it at the start. I'm like, this is a thing no one's allowed to know about, and then I just hope that no one says anything.
It's easy to make mistakes though, because people don't know what stuff's going to be hidden, and so I might just randomly, blunder into things and like.
There are other things where we're like, okay, but is it just going to get data mined in minute 0 anyway, and thus people? But then it's like, oh, maybe even that in itself is exciting, because people don't know if what's data mined is actually enabled or not.
Yeah,
so you start adding bait, and you put in little things that are just like, to intentionally make people feel the sense of mystery. So even if it is a thing that is data mined, it doesn't necessarily mean it's there. If it's like, there are things that are unintentional. Like, I don't know if the patch notes actually ended up with this, but all of the, for example, have we disclosed all of the hidden anoints? Like we expressed some. We're like, here's some that you get from the.
We didn't list them. We didn't list them. We
went over some in the live stream and the presentation, and we went over, here's a few examples, but then there's a whole bunch undiscovered. And so it's like, I wouldn't say that's a secret. It's just like, we want people to discover stuff. We want some people, and then there's the stuff like the actual secrets where we're just like, nah, good luck finding this, and we look forward to day 29 where someone figures this out or something. I want some sense of discovery over the league that's more than just like, what is your build and what is the meta, like stuff that's actually in-world discoverable things. And yeah, sometimes it gets figured out in like an hour, and you're like, oh well, whatever, still that's something. But
it's funny that you mentioned this with the bait thing, because I'm still looking at the data mine of Demon Magus and just waiting for something to happen. Like oh yeah,
this gives me hope for a hidden ascendancy, by the way. A new one besides Abyssal Lich.
It's not.
It was.
It is
I did have a quick. Sorry.
It will be a real thing one day. It wasn't intended to.
Okay. I'm just trying not to go off on my notorious 15-minute minion rant here after Jonathan's comment earlier. I did have a curiosity about the league mechanic, which kind of weaves into the history of GGG. You guys have never shied away from trying out-of-the-box crazy things, roguelike things like Sekima, Sanctum, Auto Battlers, Todia, DM's favorite TD Blight. And we saw a meteor crashing on the Infinite Atlas, utilizing the Infinite Atlas for the immersion of a meteor crashing down, it looks really cool. This small little snippet looks fantastic. And then the question I have for this is the idea of changing /and/or terraforming the Atlas something that you'll want to explore further in future updates or even leagues moving forward?
I definitely think that we're going to do more of that for sure. I mean, Doyani does have, as one of the Atlas Masters, does have a light terraforming ability. He's got the ability to change one biome into another.
I suggested this several times, by the way.
As part of his Atlas Master abilities.
Okay.
All right.
It's not completely controllable. You can't just make the whole world a desert, but you know, like he does have some light ability to do that, and
that is awesome.
So there's things like that we can do. But yeah, that actually matters quite a lot with the new Atlas tree, because the new Atlas tree has a bunch of things that are biome specific. Like this is a thing that happens in forest, and this is a thing that happens in deserts. So
People
then,
like
and
that.
there's also
People
the
like
ability to say like this biome behaves as this other biome in addition, stuff like that, like with multi-choice stuff. And so there's like things like that going on that like make the biomes matter more. And then the ability for Diani to then be able to do some terraforming means that there's some strats there ideally that you could do with him. But,
nice. Love
yeah.
this. Love this. Love it.
The imagination can immediately run wild. It's like, you know, let's
go underground.
You know, this is not been discussed before.
Go underground
like,
and delve.
What does it look like for Blight using for, you know, whatever Blight ends up being in whatever world at some point in time? But like, okay, why not have actual blighted growths that appear on the Atlas and start growing and start like overrunning things? And why not have I don't know, things invading from here, and you know, you can do anything, right? I mean, the imagination run wild.
We've got the breach domains appearing on the Atlas now. That's not like something that happens in front of you, but I mean, the fog bank thing and Delirium, the Delirious like area, that's kind of, this sort of feels a little bit like it as well, where like the Atlas gets transformed, you know, this event happens and that kind of stuff. Like, I mean, yeah, we're absolutely going to do. Like, we want every league to have more mechanics that happen on the Atlas. Like, that is an explicit thing of, like, every league should at least have something that interacts with the Atlas in a more interesting way.
Because, like, my mind went completely off when I saw that. I was like, they're probably going to do something like Catan League or Risk Play, where we're, like, pushing out settlements. Now we're playing RTS on the Infinite Atlas. That's where my mind went, and I was like, I can't wait for that.
Well, I do have a discussion I need to have with Mark, actually. About some 1.0 league ideas. So we'll see.
Okay, so they are cooking, boys. They are cooking.
And you guys are adding so much, like, such scale of content here. Like, you're adding tons of crafting, for instance. You're just all of the different changes to the Atlas Masters, like you're talking about the terraforming Atlas. How much of it is it when you're creating something, you're preemptively looking at it and being like, oh, this could be a problem. Like, this will make crafting too strong. And like, how much of this is like emergent gameplay, which we're just going to put it out into the wild and like see what the players do with it. And then we'll do changes after. Like, what's the balance?
Get the fuck out of here.
Well, so we try to think of everything we can, but we also assume that there will be a million things we didn't think of. So it's kind of like, it is really both of those things. But yeah, we do try as hard as we can to try and understand the interactions. But yes, there's just a lot of inherent risk the moment that you add all sorts of stuff like this, that you just do get something that you didn't expect. So yeah, you just assume that that's also going to happen.
That's fair. When it comes to like the progression, PoE 1 has had, you know, years, a decade plus of content and lessons learned and the progression of new leagues and trying things out. PoE 2 has only had, or quote unquote only, it's pretty fresh out the gate, but we have had 2 considered full-blown league releases. And with the 0.3 Abyss and 0.4 Alba, which we had recently, right? So I'm just curious, what kind of lessons have you guys learned from previous league releases, which has been helpful for the 0.5 one when it comes to PoE 2?
It's a tricky question because, like, I mean, we effectively learn these lessons every time. We've been doing it for so many years. The thing I guess we've been fighting. I was thinking about this earlier when we were talking, actually. It's like, in a way, we've been fighting this content war against PoE 1. Where it's like, okay, it's like PoE 1 has all the stuff. We need to get PoE 2 to some kind of standard. And so that's been like why we've needed to, in these recent leagues, to like, you know,
they
make something that feels very, very
stuff.
substantial.
Reuse it, brother.
Hopefully wins the war there now. And it's like, we've reached the point where, we've reached the point where we can say that we're an ARPG that has enough content. And that's why we're now able to say like, okay, before 1.0, we can focus more on like balance and all that sort of stuff, right? But it's like, I honestly feel sorry for other ARPGs in some way, where like they have to like they in order to even get to the point of being able to say you're competitive, you have to first win this like war versus PoE 1 of like the amount of shit that's in a game.
Exactly.
So, you know, like that's very hard. It's like it's weird that how we also had to fight that. But yeah, like
PoE 1 has a lot of shit.
I feel like we do know how to make a league at this point, and all the things you need to have in it. Like, I mean, in fact, there's a very popular GDC talk that Chris made, which I still think is 100% correct in terms of the stuff that you need to have in a league to make it work. And ultimately, all of it with PoE 2, it's just we need to just take that stuff, you know, to even better and like get it to a polished level that is like higher than what we even needed to do before and that kind of thing. But like, I mean, we know how to do it. We've done so many leagues at this point.
Honestly, the newest discovery, I would say, that is probably the hardest thing is integrating it into the start of the game.
Yeah,
because the start of PoE 2, like one thing that we didn't want to do, and I'd say PoE 1 has failed at this numerous times, is like all of a sudden you start the game and then you're just in some subzone that's in some other dimension, and you're like, what is happening? And it's like, okay, can you really say your game is like gothic horror if you're, you know, going
I've been
to some
saying
person's
that
memory or whatever,
since
you know what I mean? Like, where am I? Like, what's even going on? It's like can get a bit techy, can get a bit sci-fi, can get a little bit like just
I've been
out of
saying
there.
that
So
shit
honestly, when we're thinking
about
like
the Atlas in PoE 1,
it's a big thing that comes up now. Where we were even thinking like, what the hell? Like, can we really just have a bunch of Val stuff in the forest at the start of
that one was interesting. That one was interesting because we weren't going to do like when we designed that league originally. Going into the past was the only thing. Like we didn't have the past versus present temple, and the present day temple was a response to the fact that it felt immediately strange to walk out and be in Act 1
because it does feel like horror when you go back to the Dorian lab.
And so like we effectively had to make another version of like a bunch of those rooms in order to make that work and sort of still feel reasonable in Act 1. And so that is something we never would have done.
It is the most gory part. Act 4 is pussy compared to Act 3 in terms of gore.
You had that full pristine temple with all the living Val and everything, but like right now you encounter that at like second half of Act 3, it's a whole moment. If you just come out and you're fighting some basic zombies, a couple of crabs, and then you're just fighting like the full force of the like maximum power Val armies with the like, you just and then you go back and you're just in a forest fighting a wolf and you're like, what the hell's going on here? You know, and so it was a stupid amount of work because now we had to make undead versions of all the monsters. We had to make and that, you know, some of them needed, and as soon as a thing's undead, it can't use the same animation set. It has to look more death, like, you know, it's just a ton of work. And then all of a sudden, all the environment art, you have to have a destroyed version, a rundown version of every single room. It's like, and I'm like, why do we do this again? So Act 1 and 2 can, but it honestly makes so much of a difference than just like, you know, the world doesn't matter because I can just, you know, apparently
This is going to be something that in 1.0 is going to be a real challenge, right? Because we're expecting obviously a lot of people who haven't played the game before. It's really important that whatever we choose for the league to be, it has to be in every area, and yet it also has to be that it doesn't feel out of place. Honestly, like looking at it now, I'm like the Runes of Elder actually does that pretty damn well, and it's almost a shame that we did that one here and not in 1.0 because that would have been a really good 1.0 league. But we have to effectively somehow pull that off again and make another league that feels like fine in Act 1 and but also fine in endgame, that kind of thing. So
we have to do it 1,000 more times, right? So
I suppose so, but like it's especially important for 1.0 in my opinion, just because you've got so many new players. But yeah, it's always going to have to be something that we consider that we never really thought about in PoE 1 when we were designing leagues there. It was just whatever, you know, like I guess the feeling always was that like, you know, people have played this a bunch of times, like, you know, like it's okay to just have like a weird eldritch nightmare on the beach. It's fine. Like we'll just live with it. It's okay.
I mean, we have gotten better at it in PoE 1 as well over time, but it certainly had its moments where it was like, what the hell is going on this beach right now? You know, in the swamp with the rowers, and all of a sudden I'm in some other place. It's just,
It's kind of funny. It's funny you mentioned it from that way. I actually never thought of it that way, but you're like, it does kind of make sense. Like if you're not really familiar with PoE at all, when you play the game for the first time, and you're just like, what the hell is going on here? Yeah. But speaking of league mechanics, talk a little bit about some of the ones that are reworked here. I got a few basic questions around that. So Breach. We'll talk about Breach for a moment here. The Genesis tree is coming. Big surprise. You know, they brought it back from PoE 1 goes to PoE 2, and it looks even bigger. in PoE 2, notably only jewelry, right? But like, what kind of changes and lessons did you have to learn from the PoE 1 to implement it in PoE 2, and what did you know you wanted in it and what you didn't want?
A big decision we made, and this is like a big, honestly, philosophical thing that could have future ramifications that we end up having to go back on, because it wasn't too long ago where we had, you know, tile loot versus ground loot versus all that kind of stuff, you know, being a thing in PoE 1. And
they love the drop of divines, by the way.
Times. But you obviously, you have this thing where, you know, should a league just give the same drops, aside from ignore the bosses and their unique drops, should a league's rewards just be the same as world drops? Should it be at its ceiling worse than world drops? Should it be, you know, there's all these different questions here. And the thing is that what we have decided here, and this is an actual conscious decision we made, is that we wanted the rewards from leagues to be able to be better than world drops. And then thus comes to the important part that comes from it, which is it can't be better than everything. It has to be better than some sort of category for some sort of build. So it's not exclusively better. It's not
this
like,
is a good idea, by the way.
From here is 100% better than everything
I could explain
else.
why what
it's like
I
for
had
this
to
build, for this build, for that build, you know, these types of characters or whatever are definitely going to want items from this kind of league. Now, I'm not saying it's easy to get. It's not like it's just trivial. It's not like it completely demeans the world drops, but we have made the decision here for sure that we wanted to say, and the Genesis tree was the big thing that we discussed when we were doing this, is like, well, do we want to be able to get things that can be better than what you can find in the world? And now, obviously, you still have to do the league in order to get the crafting material in order to create them. So you can't just fully bypass the itemization as is. But this is a decision we made. And as a result, you get some pretty powerful stuff on the Genesis tree, and it's going to be pretty hard to get, but it is a thing you can do. But that is something you'll start seeing a little bit more from every league, where some are, for example, the Runes of Elder, and let's say it goes core and all of that. I mean, probably for some builds, the socketables that come from it are going to be better than any you could probably find in world drops for certain gear or certain slots, right? There's these avenues for each, and hence why the Genesis tree is focused primarily on jewelry. Like, it just straight up gives some of the best items.
That happens right now,
especially for casters and summoners in particular, that you'd be able to get compared to things that you could find in the world. And I understand some people are like, I don't want that. I just want the world drops to be better. And some people are like, no, that's the target farming. That's what I want to be able to get. That's what I want. I see that and I want to go for it. And there's
I don't like when wardrobes are better than mechanics
too far, where it's like,
because you get stuff like the temple, where you are not even farming the temple, just rarity and monster effectiveness.
There is a balance there for sure, and it can pretty easily over time tilt one way or the other. So
killing monsters randomly
we'll see what happens here, I guess.
Doing something cool.
But the important thing PoE 2 does that PoE 1 hasn't been doing as well at, but is still something that we have a similar philosophy on, is that it should be that at least it's not for like every slot. Like if the Genesis tree could get best armor, best helmet, best gloves, best boots, best weapons, best everything. Well, what the hell why do anything else? At least now it's like, okay, I can possibly for some builds get the best amulet, probably for all builds actually get the best amulet. Sort of. And then for some, get the best rings for summoners and casters, and for, you know, that kind of example, then at least you're wanting to go, okay, here's why I want to do breach. I'll get these items when I have them good, and then I'll do this other league for this other slot and do this other league for this other slot, and that's the 3 leagues you're farming. And then once you've got those gear, maybe you change to some other leagues, all the meanwhile trying to get mage bloods from world drop and to do headhunters and all of that, and, you know, your classics. So yeah, that is a decision we've actually made here. That is, I suspect, something we've never really necessarily talked about, at least not for years, about whether or not we want rewards from leagues to ultimately be better than world drops or more exclusive, or, you know, things that are ultimately exclusive to it. So it's a decision. It's where we're at, and we're going to try it, and hopefully we'll see how it goes.
That brings up 2 interesting challenges for me. One is, how do you educate the players on knowing if there's the best of each of these? How do you overcome the challenge of making sure that the education portion of the players, so they know that you can get the best of each one of these leagues from each? And the other portion is then, how do you handle the situation of things like Alkengo, like the most standard, I'm going to run a map? Like if every other league mechanic has the best of something, does that mean Alkengo has like the worst of everything? Like how do you handle both of these challenges?
From the educational standpoint, well, that's kind of in each's league's responsibility. You'll learn that over time, generally speaking. But that's where the things like, okay, the Genesis tree, you can read the nodes, you can see the helper text, you can see what kind of stuff you can get out of it. You might not know exactly what mods, what tiers, and what values, but honestly, I prefer that to be within the discovery axis anyway. What it does say is your rings can now be X, and you're like, okay, well, that, like, summon a bunch of
one way people might find that out now is because when they mouse over their item, there'll be a little build guide note there being like, you need to go to the Genesis tree and do this. So that can be one way that people will be finding that out.
Oh, there you
go. True, for sure. And so, okay, so what the other thing is let's say there's enough leagues and every league covers every slot. So like, let's say with there's 10 leagues and each league is best at one slot. Well, why do I need to do anything but you can't do all 10 leagues at once, which is good. But it is obviously still important that, for example, you still have to craft these items. You can't, like, even if you could print the base type, you can't just like infinitely now craft that item, right? So that's an important thing of needing to make sure that you're still acquiring all the core currency. You still have to do the content with the leagues in it to do it, obviously. But yeah, this is a risk. Like, for sure, I can see a world where this is just like, okay, well, any ring or amulet that ever drops in the wild, like, sure, it can be okay, it can be good, but it can't be the best. That is the consequence of this. It is a 100%.
Unless you are extremely lucky.
And I do believe they can generally be good enough, and as long as that we're niche enough with what the leagues are doing, that it won't be too problematic. But shit, it's easy to cross that line, and now rest in peace, all rings on the floor. Just may as well filter them off and you'll never see them again.
It is already like that.
That can occur. It is the actual risk. And as we add more and more content and it fills more and more of these voids, yes, you will reach that tipping point where now world drops suck. You will, almost certainly. It is something we will try to not have happen. But, in leagues down the line, yep, probably will. And there's always a way to address it. It's often just one of those, then, okay, we've done this massive rebalance of this, retargeted this, and this, but like, it's obviously hard to know when we're not there yet because we don't have enough leagues covering enough slots to actually result in this problem yet. So still quite hypothetical, but like, I can see how it will occur, a year to whatever after release. It will just be like, okay, whoops, we did it. And now there's, you filter out more and more items eventually. You run certain leagues. But at least there's the other benefit there, which is you can only run a certain number of leagues at a time. So at the very least, you'll be like varying your gameplay. You're still going to be chasing for, and because your tree juices everything, like you're not like, I'm only, because that is another actual benefit, and it's something that suffers a little bit in PoE 1. So let's say on your core Atlas tree, you like juice ultimatum. That doesn't do anything to the rest of the map, generally. I'm talking at like a general level here. And so if you're fully invested in that league, or in League A, B, and C, you'll generally zone in, do League A, B, and C, and then because the rest of the map isn't invested in at all, you could just say, I'm going to leave, right? Because the value of doing more of those as fast as possible, assuming infinite map items, which you have probably most of the time, you'll just go farm that thing over and over and over and over again. In PoE 2, because you can get full investment, like that map is as valuable as it's going to be. And that league, every league is fully invested, and those leagues are as valuable as it's going to be. And so, like, aside from tablet modifiers specifically being one of the only axes, and I guess technically choice on the Atlas Masters, but those are quite broad, or can be quite broad, you're generally going to want to kill everything, clear everything, and you're not going to have this thing where some stuff is hyper-juiced and other things are just at, like, base level worthlessness going on in the map.
Well, I don't know whether it was in the patch notes either, but it probably was. But do people know about the whole thing that we've done with tablets and like the random content? I'm not sure if you guys are aware about this. Like, that's on the same vein, by the way, which is that it was really important to us to make it so that you don't feel the need to juice everything. because like this is coming back to that idea about like like reducing the amount of time that it takes to kind of get to the point where you can do infinite farm. There was this thing we wanted to say is that once you've filled all your tablet slots, you actually don't get random things appearing anymore, and that means that you don't feel the need to juice everything. Like you can juice the several mechanics that you want to do, or like maybe it's just even one mechanic if you want to. You put all the tablets as being that thing, and then now no other random content doesn't appear, so you kind of don't have that. It's fighting against that same problem again.
I love
like,
that.
Needing to.
I only want to do my thing and fuck everything else.
So once again, you'd have the situation where if we had it so that to what Mark was saying, where a random breach could appear even though what you're doing is delirium, then it would mean that you've got content in the map you don't actually want to complete, and that's kind of the thing we're trying to avoid there. So you still can go the random route if you want by using like a radiator tablets and stuff like that, but if you want to, but if you're just focusing on a specific leagues, you just do it that way.
I had a quick follow-up to what you were saying, Mark, about you have to do the league mechanic to engage with the crafting part of that league mechanic. And as someone who very much enjoys being a hideout warrior, crafting items in PoE 1, just sitting in your hideout, doing my crafting, it sounds to me like the idea is to kind of like funnel the people into, for you to engage with this quote unquote best in slot items for XYZ builds, you have to engage with league mechanic. You have to quote unquote play the game. You can't just sit in your hideout. Is that an intentional design, or is that just a byproduct of the current design that you have right now?
I mean, you can still buy the items. So, I mean, at the end of the day, you can still. But is it intentional? I'd say most of the time it is intentional. And
it is what we're gonna do. We're gonna find
the only one like
farm
that,
currency to
really?
Yeah, I mean, but here's the thing: like, you can either always shortcut you can either buy the thing to do the crafting, or you can buy the thing at the end, right? Like, generally speaking, some element of, because we try and keep almost everything tradable, but Hiveblood in particular, yes. But then, okay, you can't trade, excess tribute offered. For wanting to do Rite of the Nameless spams, you can't trade
the beacons for the Val Temple.
You can't trade breach biomes, right? So there's like different things of stuff that can be traded and can't be traded. But generally speaking, we've tried to make sure all the rewards can be. We've tried to make sure that pinnacle keys can be traded and stuff like that. But yeah, there's going to be some leagues where you won't just be able to entirely sit in your hideout to do the crafting. You'll have to just buy the product if that's what you're wanting to do. Like, if you don't want to breach, you're just going to have to buy the breach items. And if you do breach, well, then you get to sell it to those people, I guess. So win-win for everyone, ultimately, at the end of the day. Which is a cool thing, by the way, because it still comes down to that meta market shifting. And I actually think this isn't... I don't know how I ultimately feel about this when I actually will play it in an actual economy. But let's say minion meta. Let's say everyone's playing summoners. Let's say everyone's some sort of minion across the board. Let's just say, well, now am I going, well, I have to run breach. I have to, because the economy is such that it would be bad not to. And when I hear that, it's kind of like, well, now I'm not playing the content I want to be playing. But on the other hand, I'm getting rich. So like, and maybe I am playing the contents I want to be playing. So there's a little bit of like, I don't know. But then like all of a sudden, let's say a new build gets discovered and everyone's like, oh, this build uses this item comes from this. Everyone quickly change leagues what they're doing, which you can just do. Like, that's a thing you can do aside from, again, there's some tablet farming you'd have to do and whatnot. But it's quite interesting. And generally speaking, this isn't, even though no one necessarily puts a label on it, that probably is how it naturally works. Like, even in PoE 1, that's somewhat true to some degree, where there's certain things you want to get, but it's just probably on less of an extreme and less of a less intentional level for sure, whereas we're being a bit more intentional about it here. So I think it will have that impact, and I don't know, like, there's something I'm happy about that in theory, but I don't know if I'll be happy about that in practice. And so that's an interest. And again, I can't test that internally because there is no economy, right? So none of us can. I mean, the 5 of us trading to one another is whatever. That doesn't matter, right? There's more than 5, but you get my point. And then the idea that if I feel like I have to play Breach because of X, or I have to play Delirium because of Y, or I have to play this or something, like because I'm someone who cares about trade and cares about the wealth of my account. That could be something that actually makes me feel a bit sad at the end of the day, because at the end of the day, I might want to just play the content I want to play for what the content offers, not for the economic value of it. And some people would just be like, play SSF, which, fair enough, I guess, but we'll see what happens. I don't know. I'm curious to see, now that we're being more intentional about certain builds being more powerful due to certain items from certain leagues, whether or not that's going to then result in a feeling of having to play content you wouldn't want to necessarily play, but now you feel like you have to. So we'll see. Maybe people ultimately like that. Maybe people don't. I have no idea.
Speaking of really strong items in the Breach, the new Absent Amulet looks pretty good. Implicit is granting an aura. Can you have any aura on this, or is this a limited pool?
It should be every persistent buff skill that is on the uncut. Yes.
Every spirit reservation you can get for free on that amulet.
There are 3 amulets. There's one for 30 reservation costs, one for 60, one for hundreds. It's obviously harder to get the hundreds. And thus the 60s over the 30s and whatnot. And yes, but again, there's a little bit of good luck as well. You probably have to do a lot of farming to get what you want here. But this is what I was saying about when I was saying it does arguably offer the best item.
The power creep is insane if you farm enough.
The rare equivalent of the Mage Blood of amulets, is it is there, and I want that to be something you can get. Now, does that mean world drop amulets are less valuable? Well, yeah, it will. It 100% will indeed result in that. And the same way that the existence of a headhunter and a mage blood demean the value of rare belts in general. Well, rare belts are in a bit of a sad state, hopefully a less sad state anyway, but rare belts are demeaned by the existence of very broad, very chase items.
Exactly.
And so there's this interesting, well, do you want the chase items or not? And, there's a bit of philosophy around that, and people tilt one side or the other. And so we're just effectively saying, yeah, here's this freaking OP thing. It should be hard to get, it shouldn't be easy to craft, and it should be something you want to chase. And there's a very clear path to it, not necessarily an easy path.
Hopefully that Delirium amulet is competitive with it on some level.
Yeah, which also very hard to get the right one. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, they are hinting off a Delirium amulet.
The Delirium amulet, you get the 2 instills and you can't reinstall one of them or something, right? You get the 2 and you're locked.
I believe it unintentionally allowed you to replace one, but I did say it shouldn't. It should just be you want to get as many as possible. And when you get the right one with the right 2 notables, you're just like, holy fucking thank God I can go buy 6. It's just, you want that really, really again, these are super rare but super chase, right? And
sure,
you'll get one that has 2 okay instills and you'll still be happy. But when you get the 2 that are the 2 you actually want, I want you to really be stoked. So the point where every single time you find this, you're like, holy shit, this could be it. This is the the 5 mirror drop.
Here. Like it.
On the topic of Delirium and jewelries for that matter, in Delirium we're now getting some additional crafting options when it comes to jewels.
Not
jewelries, but jewels. And I mean, they're already let's call it a fairly strong place is where we'll put jewels, at least from most of our perspectives.
The voices.
How do you guys feel about the balance of standard rare jewels versus something like adorned, as well as time lost jewels in the current state of the game, or 0.5 rather?
Well, the crafting for jewels was mostly that the rationale behind adding that was ultimately, okay, when you finish a full sanctum, you end up with just 45 jewels in your inventory if you take all the jewel chests, and you're like, okay, 4 of them are okay, I guess. And it's just extreme item saturation just to get the good ones. And it's well, we're missing crafting here, really, right? We need something here to help guide it to be that they're okay, especially given that the jewel sockets are on kind of core pathways. You get them and then you're like, I don't even have anything to put in this for a while. So at least now, and obviously you get some of these in the Act 4 in the campaign, you'll be able to, you know, craft something that at least has one or maybe two useful stats for your character. If it had one by default and you add one that's decent. So that's just a win for like your more broad player base of just interacting with base jewels as a base level.
Thing
in terms of the actual jewel balance, well, yeah, you'd kind of just end up with get all the jewel slots. You know, like there's so many really good endgame unique jewels, as well as just like what you can do with the top end power of jewels, that like you end up with that thing with a lot of passive trees, just like I need to get every jewel slot, and then you end up with these kind of really shitty looking builds, honestly, where they're just not even taking anything, and it's like, what's the cheapest stuff I can take along the way, but otherwise it's just jewel slot. There's definitely some problems here. How do I feel about it? I mean, I kind of in one end I'm like, well, it's like a very it can be a very satisfying, advanced, and honestly complex crafting system that a lot of people probably like to overall engage with, where their more traditional build ends up looking like this crazy jewel fest. On the other hand, it's got the problem where, you know, every character kind of devolves into looking like a very similar thing. You know, I'm trying to think whether or not I ultimately enjoy it or not as a player. Probably less so. Like, I probably think it's ultimately not a good spot. Like, I would say if I had to not, I would, you know, I don't like the idea that ultimately 95% of the passives on the tree don't matter at all, even though some of them don't matter anyway. You know, something we need to fix, but I don't like that it just ends up being that. But I do like the, like, I want to chase all the really chase unique jewels. So I don't know. Yeah, I'm kind of like a bit, you know, hit and miss on it ultimately. I don't know. I'm curious what, like, you know, a lot more people think about this kind of level of meta and itemization. Because, like, you know, I see a lot of stuff that's quite, you know, I hate jewels, or like, you know, keep these unique jewels but not the rest, and then obviously timeless jewels are a whole different level of complexity. But yeah, I mean,
give me the calculator for the timeless jewels.
The original point here is we wanted to create a thing that's just improves the experience from the average player who's just engaging with a few jewel sockets, more than, you know, thinking about what it does for the end game, you know, the end of the end game, I should say, kind of situation with character builds and itemization. So, because it buffs that as well. It's obviously just an upgrade for them regardless, which is maybe not a good thing. But I think it's one of those things where that's a thing of, like, do you think about every consequence? And it's like, well, kind of, but this is a good enough improvement for, you know, regular players, such that, you know, it was worth doing, and we weren't caught up too much on the consequences of what it means for later. But I would expect more changes later, much later, of course, like some point later, to around this kind of jewel meta. But I am also very curious to see what, you know, what everyone actually thinks about this. Like, do you like it? Do you hate it? Do you, you know, do you like...
OP as fuck.
I guess the bigger question is, do you like that a lot of characters just end up wanting to as many jewel slots as possible?
No.
And wanting to just have jewels everywhere, because once you can craft, it's effectively a way of saying your passive tree goes from what we've said it is to what you want it to be, based on the fact that you can craft and put in there exactly what you want. And that sounds like a good pitch in isolation, but then when you play it, you kind of have this problem of, like, I can't play my build until I've earned some large amount of money and done all this, which again could be good as well, where it's like, the builds at the start of the league, the builds in the middle of the league, and the builds at the end of the league aren't the same thing, because we had to let the, you know, because enough jewels had to be found and or created in order to create that many characters. So
you could be an idiot if there is no secret ascendancy, but if there is, then you are a genius.
I'm on the fence, honestly.
Okay. Well, we can move on to the miscellaneous portion here. We're at over just about 2 hours. I know we're trying to keep it shorter, so we'll do the miscellaneous portion. We got a few questions here, and we have, like, just a handful of patch notes related questions, and then we can kind of wrap up. So to start, for the miscellaneous portion, what's going on with Toda? Like, where's Toda currently at?
Well, we don't have it.
Trial of the Ancestors,
yeah, like
by the way.
I was really hoping that we would be able to get that the final Ascendancy trial when we did Act 4. We couldn't quite make it. We didn't have the time. We obviously couldn't fit it into this cycle in 050. So the question is whether or not, I suppose, whether it comes in 1.0. I think that's looking unlikely, to be honest. Like, I don't think it's as important as some other things. But we'll see what we can do. It's kind of come down to whether or not we can somehow make what that does sort of merge with something else, I suspect. If there's quite a lot of work.
What we've been trying to do is, talking about the merging, is similar to how Runes of Elder is a kind of like expedition Kalguran thing. Yeah, to be whether or not like it's like kind of like, are we able to create a kind of Karui league that links into Tota somehow, and thus we get to double dip on the content. Yeah.
Exactly. So if we're able to make a Karui themed league, then that will mean that we can effectively share some of the monster workload and like boss workload across both.
When they do it,
make it
then
more
do it. It is necessary.
Alongside some of that other content. And with Runes of Elder, we got to effectively do an expedition upgrade at the same time as what we were doing as doing a league. And so that kind of like really helped with that. Like, and part of the reason we did that for this one is because we had so much other stuff going on with the other leagues as well that we figured making the core league be integrated somewhat with one of the leagues we're upgrading would help quite a lot. But yeah, maybe we might be able to squeeze Tota in if we were able to do a similar move like that. But otherwise it'll probably have to if we can't do that, then it would have to wait for like a 1.1 or 1.2 kind of situation. Yeah.
It's quite interesting when we look at Tota because when we made it for PoE
they improved the current ascendancies, brother, because they suck.
Oh, this will be cool to kind of be able to then use there later and like, you know. And then now the quality bar has risen so much that when we then look at Tota in the context of PoE 2, like we thought all of the animations, the models, the art, the combat, everything, we'd be able to just like, we can just copy paste it. It'll be fine. And now when you go look at all those monsters and like just how long it's been and how much we've stepped up our game with stuff, it's like, these don't hold up at all. Like we have to, and so we had intended for it to be a way easier thing to just, you know, transplant from one to the other and like do some, you know, some polish, some touch ups. And now it's like, okay, we have to like effectively reanimate all of these. We have to, and so it's a ton, you know, you've got the multiple monsters of each tribe. You had the 10 chieftains and let alone all the story moments and advancements we've done there. It's like, this is a shit ton of work where it's like, you know, I mean, it's the monster work of, it's probably like 75% of an act levels of equivalency of actual monster work. Like it's quite a lot. Obviously an act, a lot of it is the unification of the environment, the monsters, the narrative, etc. Whereas like obviously the part that is easier for Tota is it ultimately takes place in one arena with one back room, and thus it's faster to ultimately make. But in terms of just raw animation work and raw effects work for all the different skills, all the like scripting on the game design side, it is a ton of work. And so it's just been, again, when we were like, okay, is Tota being missing or the end game not having goals? Well, obviously the end game. And so when we're just coming up with the stuff, we're just going, what is the most important thing we need to do now? And Tota has not been it, given like it would be different if it didn't require a ton of work. Sure. We could probably chuck it in alongside one of these things, but it just somehow is not held up at all. And yeah, so if it weren't for just straight up being too much work, it would be there already. Like it just is an insane amount of actual work to do that is going to cost some pretty important stuff.
I appreciate the answer.
That makes sense.
Tota is just a personal favorite of mine because that was the league I joined, PoE actually. It's my first league ever with Tota. So I was curious. Go on, Gazi.
Well, I was just going to move on since we're kind of over the time already. I do apologize for that. Appreciate you guys sticking around. The next question I have is kind of a twofold question. I'm going to start with the first half of it, which is more about the design philosophy of unique items in PoE 2. PoE 1 has their version, and PoE 2 seems to be more build-defining options in terms of the unique items. So
ask about the skill in the uniques.
Pivot on what's the philosophy differences here? What's the focus?
Well, this changed a lot in recent time, by relatively recent, I mean the last couple of years. because we had a bunch of uniques. We honestly believed at the start that we'd be able to just take a bunch of PoE 1 uniques, modify them slightly, and put them in PoE 2, and that just completely 100% is not a thing we can do. Like, it's interesting because the combat systems in PoE 2, working the way they are, had a way larger influence on what's an acceptable unique than what we kind of expected. And it's honestly surprising because like you'd still think, oh yeah, why can we not, like, how is it not that there's just like 50 PoE 1 uniques we could just literally take and just put in PoE 2 if we wanted to? And then you go through each one and you're like, okay, well this one can't be for that reason, this one can't be for that reason, like the dominant stat would just totally have to change. Like it's weird how it sort of ended up that way. And so even also when we did add a pile of uniques in I can't remember what patch it was like after 1.1. It was like a patch we added a bunch of uniques, and those uniques were kind of like a lot more here we want design scale have not really held up either, and honestly we're gonna have to go back and probably like on a PoE 2 unique in order to make it sort of somewhat worthwhile. So yeah, like I don't know I could even necessarily say exactly what it is particularly that's caused it to be that way, but for whatever reason, like when I look at a PO1 style designed unique at this point, it just does not rise to the level that we feel like you'd actually use it. And so yeah, I do wonder if one reason can be that I sort of suspect it's got something to do with the fact that in PoE 1 build you tend to just optimize one skill and that's all you're doing. And so then, like in PoE 2 context, we've got to care about more about that, like the larger build. Like there's a lot more going on with with a PoE 2 build. At least that's the intention. So I sort of have this feeling it's got something to do with that, but I don't know if I can necessarily pinpoint exactly why it is that we do feel like a unique has to be just a significant amount more going on.
Well, that's fair. The follow. Sorry, go ahead.
I do got a thing there because like what we're making now, like a lot of what we've been showing with 050, like a lot of the stuff you've seen recently, this is kind of this age of uniques is probably it's not something we've done before really. Like all the uniques we're making are definitely the most expensive in terms of development costs.
0 calories monster, let's go.
And as a result, they are more build defining. Now on the other end of the spectrum, you do have then the uniques that they kind of have their single special stat. It's kind of like 4 stats, one of them's a bit special, and it probably just has some sort of end game when combined with 6 other variables as a thing. And the problem with those is that they don't hit for like most people when they get them, they're like, what the hell, why would I want that? And they just end up being these really like hyper niche end game things. So that was a type of philosophy we had where they were effectively meant to be the puzzle piece, right? And you need multiple puzzle pieces in order to do the thing. Those uniques are generally failing when you find them, like generally speaking. And Jonathan did this exercise with me yesterday. We opened up that same character when we were looking at something. He showed me every unique. We went through all of them, and he just goes like, and he was like, why would I want this? Why would I need this? And I was explaining the like end game build used with them. And he's like, well, how the hell, like, okay. But then it drops at level 23, you know, it's like, and so there is a problem with that. And so our new philosophy has just been like, let's try and make these way more for full of fantasy. Because that's my biggest thing is just, I want you to feel like, you know, and that you saw that with the grenade launcher thing where it's just like, I just want you to just be a freaking grenade man. Like just run around spamming grenades.
Exactly. I agree with Mark
and then,
here.
Like the face breaker thing obviously recently is pretty cool. You had the like, the Raven and more summoner like delirium things. It's like what if you were like Tang Mizu himself, like you had his powers. Like that's a cool fantasy where you can like create mirrors and illusory things and like bend reality, and like that's a cool fantasy to me, you know. So some can be more narratively driven, some can just be like fire grenades everywhere, and that stuff is resulting in
sometimes the unique sucks, and that prevents you from using the skill.
Also way more expensive.
Give me the ability to extract the skill from the unique.
What I want to get better at yet, I think something we haven't now. So I think we've now got the puzzle piece side. We understand what that looks like. We understand what the other end, which is the more expensive fantasy fulfilling build defining thing looks like. What we don't have is the middle ground where there's that kind of not as expensive to develop, but pretty impactful, just not like ultra impactful ground that we still need to do as well. And I think once we've figured that out and we've got our understanding of all three, now you are going to see generally that middle ground and higher ground. You're probably not going to see as much of those original set, and we're going to have to go back and honestly raise the bar on all of those, or a lot of those at this point.
Yeah, they are getting upgrades to some extent due to the Calgarian like unique upgrading thing, so that has helped. But there's still some of them that are a bit unsalvageable that we just need to do something with.
And by the way, there are unsalvageable uniques in PoE 1 as well, right? It's just that there are 1,500 of them or some number, and so they kind of get lost in the weeds, as opposed to right now, the I would say, there's a mid ground of them where they honestly, you get it and you're like, I don't know why, I don't need it, so there's, to me, so I think what we've now made is like, a lot of what we've made is so epic. I really love them. And like, even talking about them and doing the videos, and there's so many more that haven't been, talked about or found yet, which is awesome, that just keep going, and some secrets, and, the barracks and all of that coming in. So once we get, like now that we've got that rhythm and we're working that, we're just going to get more and more efficient with it. But I honestly think, and this is a thing that I've said to Jonathan as well, where I'm like, I think maybe our number one problem in the game, like after 050 comes out, now that if endgame's in a good spot, now that we've sorted that and we have a good progression, we've got goals, my personal number one fault with what we haven't got doing well, especially because of our reputation, is that I think that our thing that we need to step up and do the better at, that we currently have done very poorly, is our unique items. Like, I straight up think that
okay, based as fuck,
we were meant to be the like weird epic in terms of ARPGs. Like, we're real good at items and itemization and uniques and crafting systems, and like I do believe that we generally are, and I don't think PoE 2 is an accurate reflection of what our capability should be. And so
based,
now that we're delivering like real cool shit, I just want to go and just fix up all of them. And so that's another one of these like 055 050 and between 1.0, I want to be like, nah, we have to save the uniques. Like, that's a goal I have. Now, obviously, different people have different levels of understanding of what's important to the game, or the most important to the game, but like, I would be shocked if that's not on like most people's top 3, top 5 list of like things that are the most wrong with the game currently. There's a lot of really good, there's a lot of really bad, and we can't have that. And I think the biggest thing, like to give a more specific example, on my big rant, a lot of our uniques are level 1 to 30, right? Level 1 to 30-ish, and a lot of them are the puzzle piece. Some are good, some are not good, some are whatever, hit and miss. And we've got this like now endgame band that we've added, and we've added a bunch to the new pinnacles. We've got a bunch of things you can farm for the different leagues. What we don't have now, and I think this is a huge problem, is between level 30 and 60, there's kind of just nothing. There's kind of, honestly, it's like barely any start to drop. And I don't mean the level requirements, I mean when it can.
And the annoying thing about that as well is that often, like when you're in that band, the things you're getting are the ones that are like level 1 to 30.
Yeah.
And so then what you end up feeling is like you get these and they just feel like they suck, because like if you'd put them on at level 20, they would have been fine. But you're putting them on at level 40 and it's kind of like, well, this is just garbage.
Yeah. Because of how our uniques work, our unique drops work, where it's like, first I'm going to decide if I'm dropping a unique, then I'll figure out what the unique is. It's like, I'm going to drop a unique, and then it's like, okay, let me go and find one, and it just so happens that every unique lower than that level is between 1 and 30. It means pretty much any unique drop between level 40 and 60 is just going to be bad. Like, a niche cases aside,
it is like that in every level,
in some cases, but like that is a big problem where pretty
because
much
99.9 of them suck
mid game, and thus ones leading into end game. You have very few ones that allow you, like, get you set up for end game. Like, there are some, again, there is a few, but like it's nowhere near good enough. Nowhere near, not even in the right. We're like 20% of the way to good enough there. So. I don't often talk about what I consider to be, because generally when we're talking, we're obviously talking about, what's new, what's happening, but we don't really get to talk about what's like just fundamentally wrong. And I'm trying to be a little bit more transparent about some of that stuff, because that is the stuff we're aiming to fix and address and really try and salvage and save and get perfect between 050 and 1.0.
So yeah, we're hoping to fix that in one of the kind of economy resets that we'll do between 050 and 1.0. Is there just like add a shit ton of mid game uniques?
On the topic of fixing things, my follow-up questions that I really was curious about this. I do first want to say that I'm a big fan of the Kalguran upping your uniques. This is the first time since PoE, 10, 12 years ago, I think, since I'm actually considering using Shober Chabber on a build. So, I mean, that's just because of the Kalguran upping. So that's funny. But my question is, regarding these build-defining uniques that you're adding, they're supposed to be interesting and impactful, giving you a skill, and people make builds around them, like the Grenade Man, for a prime example. A problem that I've seen being discussed a lot in the community has been that your main skill is supposed to have maximum sockets. It's a quote-unquote 6 socket, but it's actually only 5 sockets, right, in PoE 2, but maximum sockets. And that is gated behind a level 20 version of the skill, which means it's going to cost more if the item is popular in the market. It's going to be rarer to find. It has a higher level requirement to drop, and all those aspects. But there's already a power scaling difference between having a lower level skill of the skill itself and having a level 20 version in terms of what the benefits are. But the socket difference is so massive. So I was just curious if this is something you haven't thought of, or if it is a design you're happy with moving forward, that the max sockets is only on the level 20
I like this question too.
We've discussed this many times, just FYI, like it's came up a lot. But I think for 050, and I'm hoping this gets done in time, and if not, it'll be shortly after. I was adding, like, as a kind of, like, in an ideal world, you'd just be able to either, well, at least you'd be able to just like, okay, why not just allow using a perfect Jeweler's Orb on it, for example? And
exactly.
I was literally about to say that. Why can you not just Jeweler's,
But for now, you can't currently, but that will be the goal.
Or a different currency for that.
I think just time constraints, but I mean, feel free to look into it yourself. But
I mean, like, is it really that hard to implement that?
I don't know.
I have no idea how it works in terms of the way the storage is.
Well, exactly. I have absolutely no idea. So
I love when they have these little things, man.
Do that, honestly. Like, it might just be possible.
Being that, if that doesn't work, because that is the ideal solution, at the very least, I was going to get a temporary, just like recipe thing added where you can.
It lagged. Why did it lag?
Get a level 19 item, a level 20 uncut skill, and a perfect Jeweler's Orb, and then level 20 and 6 link the item as a thing that we were just going to enable. That is
doing the perfect jeweler thing. I feel like that would be. Surely we can make that happen. I don't know.
Well, follow up on that if you want. I have. Either way, multiple solutions. We will hopefully get one of them in time.
All right. Well, one last question, and then we're going to cut out the patch notes related and some of the other ones here, since we're kind of at the edge of the time. If you want, we can do just a couple rapid fires from chat, and then we can call it there. Sound good?
Sure.
Okay. So I want to follow up on something that Ziggy D asked. Very selfishly of me, admittedly. I'm playing the Spear Walker. I think it's the funnest looking thing, like, in the entire review that I saw.
They are
He mentioned that Tame Beast is like a level 9 cut gem. However, you can ascend and take the node that lets you capture beasts way before you can actually get to the cut gem. And you mentioned you might have a solution to this because it's a little bit of a noob trap, right? You take a node that you literally can't even use for like 10 levels or something. So I was wondering, when I saw the patch notes, it still said the gem starts at level 9. So I'm curious, do we have a solution for this coming to 0.5?
I thought we were going to just change it. I thought we were going to change it so that the
Pincristas, you have to respect the will. Also, Smith of Kitao is cool.
I thought we were going to make it so that Tame Beast was just a lower level skill, but that's what the last I heard about it.
Certainly, the last discussion I had was that we were going to move it down to a lower level skill tier. So it could be the patch note was wrong. It could be something caused that to not happen. But that was definitely both Jonathan and I's understanding of the last of that conversation. So, but yes, we don't want that to be a problem. We will do something about it.
James just messaged me that Tame Beast in is level 7 now. Patch notes missed it for some reason.
Perfect.
So he just messaged me that.
Awesome.
So that is the answer to that. So
W.
Well, unless Ghazi got a last question for him before we start the rapid fire and wrap it up here?
I was just wanted to have some sort of curiosity into your minds with basically the progression of what's going to happen between 0.5 and 1.0. We don't have to go too deep into it, but I'm curious because you, Mark, mentioned something that I keep referencing, and that is the plugging the holes. And I love that. I don't know why I love that comment, but plugging the holes and getting balance fixes and changes between 0.5 and 1.0. So my question, just to keep it short, is what are the things you want to prioritize in the updates between now and end of the year during this time frame?
So unique items, as Mark said, very big one. Like a lot of skill balance, a lot of just like character balance, adding some skills to existing classes where necessary, and or changing functionality of how they work for just like where we're going back and just making sure that everything that we already released in the, in 010 is like in a better place, like just like all of that sort of stuff, like that's big.
Remove
Passive
rarity.
tree reworks, just like improvements there is like another big one. And I mean, I guess that's probably the main stuff, really. Like,
Well,
yeah, I think, and then
it's a lot of the other chaos damage, getting that to be better, and thus acolyte,
right.
Ignite builds, burn, damage over time in general.
Right.
Just all these things that we've been, and honestly, it's come up in a few expansions. And it's just like, well, we just haven't got there yet, And as I said, the passive tree, the base types, the bloody hope the general more replayability improvements certainly would also be good if there's any new one. Like, I've been really nice after people play through this and get a feel for it to obviously identify the new evils, what's bad, what's annoying. Like, now that people are going to be replaying through Act 4 for the third time,
that's 100% a thing, right? So like, is that like Act 4 didn't get a huge amount of changes in this patch, and I suspect part of the reason for that is because we haven't had the time. Like, there hasn't been a like resurgence of people saying I hate things in Act 4 because people haven't necessarily replayed it that much. So like, I'm sure there'll be things in Act 4 that after this patch people will be like, oh, this is the horrible thing in Act 4 that I don't like. So we'll see. We'll just have to see what that is at that point.
I'm not sure if they'll come sooner or later, but I'd like to do sooner. I'd like to, when we have our like next economy reset between, that we have either the third ranger or the third druid ascendancies come in. Like, it'd be nice for all existing classes to have all ascendancies before the full release. What else? It's just the things, because they're just missing, right? It's just clearly
that is a big opportunity to not spin the wheel and just play the new druid ascendancy.
Possible would be really,
focus
really ideal.
on shape shifting.
And yeah, I don't say
Can
much
I
else.
I'm sure
there.
Just wanted to verify. You said that economy resets. That just to verify that I heard you right. There will be economy resets leagues.
There will be economy resets. So there will effectively like there will be leagues. It's just that they're not going to be like. They're not going to be the same as what is like a proper, it's not going to be an 06, what an 06
I suggested this, by the way,
why we say that is because we don't want to set the wrong expectation, and like, it's not going to be like the giant mega content release in that way. Now, there will be content, right, because we're talking about adding uniques and skills and all that stuff, but it's not going to be quite the same, I think. Like, I wouldn't expect necessarily to be like, like the on the other hand, we're generally pretty good at taking little and turning it into a lot. So I guess we'll see what we end up with there. But I mean, the thing we've referenced before is like Legacy or Phyrexia type of stuff, right? Where you just take some existing stuff, you jumble it around.
Phyrexia is not the shedding magic the gathering.
Hell, maybe you freaking add an Atlas Master or do the jumble and Atlas Master stuff like Mark was saying earlier, like as a league, and just little stuff like that that you can do that doesn't take too long to make it sort of worth playing again. But really, the main reason we want people to be playing again is so that they can test all the new balance and changes to kind of core systems that we're changing.
Whatever the league end up will be something that has the least amount of impact on the team doing the balance, right? So as long as we're not using their time to then not solve the things they need to solve, that will be a big thing. But just things that are hard to even think about. If there is an economy reset, well, then we have to look at Runes of Elder, how it succeeded, how it failed, and integrate it into core. If it's fully successful, add an Atlas passive tree for it, all of that stuff. So all of that will be happening around the same time. And, then we'll have here's what our, minus the 1.0 league, it's like, here's what our endgame is and what our endgame looks like. So we'll just...
Which is the other thing, right? Because who knows what random endgame changes we might then find we need after this is released, and then we have to make it, we have to... Presumably any patch we do is going to involve improving that, whatever problems might end up being. Like, it's just stuff like that we're going to have to do.
I had one quick follow-up to weave into this last question, so I'm going to keep it real short. You guys have done an excellent job in the past, track record history of shaking up the meta with character balance changes on a consistent basis, where people are not just playing the new content, but we're playing the game in a different way very often from league to league to league. So the question then goes to the changes coming from 0.5 or between 0.5 and 1.0. Will they also include character power balance and meta shakeups?
Lots. Okay. That's one of the big focuses.
It's like two-thirds of what it will contain is that.
Mm-hmm. Okay, awesome.
Nice.
Love it.
That's the goal, right?
Love to hear it. W.
It is 90% of the goal is, and because uniques are ultimately about this, is just how characters are built. Well, let's say 80%, whereas 20% is like improving the content more. So most of it is going to be more oriented around character builds, character powers, etc. But and even to the degree of like, okay, there are some skills that don't feel good to use. There are some, so it's not just power, it's also feel, how these things feel to play. Are they rewarding to play? When I do A, B, C, D and do my combo piece, does it land or is it just like meh? So going back and revisiting even some of the effects and some of the audio, and obviously the numbers, like whatever we can do to really just go and say everything we've now, or maybe it's like, there's an A and a B, but we need the C, you need the finale piece to it. And so we go and add that. So you have new skills, modified skills, changed both aesthetically, cosmetically, and in balance, potential new classes, a whole bunch of new uniques, I'm hoping, with a bunch of uniques being rebalanced, like all of this stuff across the board. Now, normally, when we have a big reveal, we don't talk about all this stuff because we like everything to be new, but like it's pretty easy to talk about all the things that we need to make better, and so that's really what we're going to do, and we'll just hopefully be able to get through it all. But how these things go, we don't stop development, so even though full release occurs, we're going to still then balance in 1.1 and 1.2 and 1.3, and it's just never going to end. So if we don't get 100% right, we'll just keep going.
All right, so we're going to do a couple rapid fires here.
Lost TM's audio there.
Oh, how about now? Am I back? We good?
There we go.
All right. Yeah, sorry about that. I was typing in the chat to tell them to put their questions together, and I hit the mute button. Okay, so we're going to do rapid fire from the chat here, and then we're going to call it a day. So first one here, is there anything added to the game you guys would consider to be like aspirational content? Basically, they're saying extremely difficult content coming to the game, like Ubers, etc.
Look, everyone has their own definition of this, I assume, to some degree, right?
Sure.
Some people are just going to find the farmed pinnacles to be that. In terms of Ubers, we've specifically made sure to not. So you obviously you have your quest version, your non-quest version. I didn't want a then Uber grade of that, and the reason is that, not to say it won't eventually happen, is that it puts a bit of a difficult skew on what is considered an acceptable character at a fundamental level, because now they have to be able to do the hardest content in order to be good. But
at the same time, I want
so much incomplete character balance and stuff we still need to work on and fill the gaps and everything. I wanted to make sure there wasn't just stuff that is like,
I told you there was going to be power creep. We are going to destroy the content.
The most OP of the OP of the OP builds, because it was, and this is something that it already was doing, where all of a sudden the viability of a character was being judged by some people against whether or not it can kill a pinnacle, some whether it can complete maps of certain tiers, and some where it can kill the Ubers, and it creates a bit of a difficult thing where it's like, what is considered acceptable? And so the new pinnacles are hard, like for sure. All the fights are pretty damn difficult, and as I said, you can generally juice these things and do there are ways via the Atlas Masters to take them to slightly next levels. There are things with the different leagues, with the different league trees, to both add rewards and make them harder in the form of multi-choices. And so there are ways to do it, but they wouldn't say they're classically defined as Ubers anymore. I wanted to get away from that. We'll get everything stable, we'll get everything good, and then we'll look at re-adding some of that stuff back. Be it either via an actual Uber fight or be it via, a master or something like that. We'll see.
Quick question about Recombinator was moved out of the game, so we're kind of curious about what's going on with that.
I just kind of didn't like it, to be honest. Like it's always been in this annoying balance position where like the numbers that it has to be like to not be completely cracked and broken never been satisfying for the players, and we've never been able to somehow like get that right. So we just decided, you know what, screw it for now. We'll see. We might revisit that again later if we can find some way to change it in some way. But yeah.
I think all the new runes we added, all of the runic ward, it's just so much better. So much more
they are just replacing
usable, like not insanely overcomplicated. They're just better. So we were like, look, it had recombinating, it just doesn't need it. Like, here's all the stuff that we can do that is clearly better. I mean, at first we kept it because there's like a little bit of a loss aversion thing, but it's like, okay, look, we're at like, do we really need it at this point? So ultimately, we just decided to axe it, noting that like everything we're adding in its stead is just significant upgrades IMO.
Okay. I'm assuming similar logic with like the expedition shops. They're still in the game, but they're kind of like not the primary focus.
They're gone.
The
expedition shops are dead.
Gone as well.
Yeah. Nice base.
I mean, they were basically just taken from PoE 1 and like they never really were proper stuff, and yeah, we just
taken and then downgraded, and then kind of like, oh, we don't want it to be. They were just not good. So again, it was like we're like, let's get rid of the stuff that's just clearly subpar and replace it with stuff that's just clearly better. Like, we don't have to be so attached to it, and you know.
Sure. Okay. On to the next one here from chat. Corruption. So you guys made like a fairly significant change, actually, the corruption, where instead of it like randomizing it, it's like a multiplier, right? So you want to divine it first before your corruption. Would you like to speak to that change, Lil?
Annulment of corruption as well.
Well, that is what we did, yes. What was the goal there? I guess ultimately liked the idea that when you get I mean, I agree. I understand why some people are going to be like, no, I have to use divines now. Well, yeah, that's what you got to do, right? You got to make a much more, a bit of a harder decision to decide, am I going to divine this item to be its perfect role and then do it, or am I not? And I guess, I don't know, I just prefer it more. It's a bit more hardcore. It's a bit more Val. It's
Just Val that shit, don't be a pussy.
You know, costly. And generally speaking, I'm a fan of that, as opposed to just every time I find this, I just Val it no matter what. Which, you know, I just think it's personally better, but I can see people not entirely agreeing with that, and you're right to that opinion, and too bad, I guess, is my answer, but I just 100%
Do you remember how I deleted items because of double corruption, and they were very expensive items?
Like
the other day I destroyed a 700 divine item.
Well, in that case, then win.
In previous interviews we've had, a conversation has been brought up multiple times, has been, you know, inflation and wanting a divine sync, and every time the comment has been, we need more uniques, we need more interesting uniques to divine orb, and I never really felt that it really did that job enough. And I think that with this change alone and continuously adding more uniques, you might actually hit the spot where this is doing exactly what we've been screaming for the past year.
Right.
Speaking of divines, one thing that came up was divine orbs that are now more common, which was one of the patch notes. I mean, you know, small line, big decision. So is that
People
there
are
to balance
excited
out like
about
the
that.
changes to the Atlas and less Quan? It's really not that more common, or what's that line mean?
It's definitely more common, divine orbs. I'm almost tempted to not mention the reason why we did that, but I don't know how you feel about that, Mark. Sure. All right.
Just do it. Just do it.
Yeah. All right. So basically, okay. So this is going to sound ultra dumb, I suspect, to some people. So we'll see how this goes. But,
something good is coming.
So the temple, right? The temple had ridiculous amounts of loot going on due to snake strategy and all that sort of shit. So there was stuff like going that, right? So basically, there's this concern that we had that people are going to be like, okay, so the temple is obviously nerfed, right? Like, snake strategy no longer a thing. Like, you know, it means that, like, and so then what we believed was going to happen is immediately people are going to be like, oh, previous league I got X divines per hour and now I'm getting Y divines per hour, and like just annoying shit like that. And so we're like, if we just change the drop rate of divines, nobody will be able to make the comparison anymore.
Base as fuck, man. They understand that people are idiots with the things.
Now, I just want to know. I just want you to know, by the way, that the troll answer that we legitimately thought we might do for a second is, what if we just removed divines from the game? That was like a legitimate troll answer that we had as like the opposite of this. But instead of doing that, we're like, okay, okay, no, let's make them more common. They're not like, it's not like they're dropping like candy or anything, right? But they are like, you know, they're an amount more common that is like such that, you know, that doesn't make them quite comparable anymore. And yeah, that's just down to the fact that divines, for whatever reason, are the thing that people use as the sort of way that comparing loot. So because the loot is kind of like all, like there's a lot of changes all over to the loot everywhere, you'll kind of, you know, you'll I guess it just makes the whole thing less comparable, and yeah, that is truly part of the reason why we did that. But yes, we do want to divine syncs as well, which is the Vartwarp thing. So you know, yeah.
All right, well, I'll do one more here, and we'll call it. We're at 2 hours and like 35 minutes here. So just a real common one that keeps popping up is people are just asking about performance improvements. Like with every league, you guys typically do quite a bit of performance improvements. Are we expecting that going in 0.5? I know you talked a little bit about Steam Deck, you know, for instance, but console, PC, all of it.
I wouldn't say that. I mean, look, there have been changes, but I wouldn't say that they're revolutionary to the point that I would call them out specifically as like we made big performance improvements. Like there's just the sort of usual iteration that we do. One of the big things that we've been really trying to fight has just been this annoying freaking driver device removed thing, which maybe people don't even know what that is, but like sometimes the game will freeze and then it
I don't know
reboots
what
the
is
graphic stuff and then it all comes back, like that thing. And like we haven't fixed it yet. We're still looking into it. It's just been like the engine team has been just banging their head against it for so long now. Like we're actually at the point now, by the way, where like Nvidia told us a couple of days ago, we want you to ship us, like air freight us a PC that reproduces this. Is like the thing. So now we're going to steal one of our PCs and send it to Nvidia to see if that will get the ability to work out what's going on. But like, yeah, there's been a lot of trying to sort out like this kind of stuff and like work on crashes and that kind of thing. So there's less like performance in the sense of like, you know, frame rate higher. But we still will be doing more about that and like the 05X patches and that kind of thing.
Yeah, okay, you know what I like? One last kind of random question here, which I don't know if you have an answer for, but I'm going to try, okay? I know Hex Blast was the skill people were using before. It got changed at one point.
Good question.
Really
they destroyed Hex Blast for no reason.
It's really seen much use. I know it was beloved by some people out there. I know you might not have the answer off the top of your head, but could we see some love for Hex Blacks or Fix or Revert or anything at some point? Like, where's your stance on that skill?
I have not thought about that one for a while, I have to admit. So yeah. It'd be one of those things that would look at an 05X timeline, I'd say.
Sure.
Because, yeah, it's just, if it's not working and people aren't using it, then that'll be one of the things that we want looking to buff, I suspect.
That is why you need to hire me. I would have an answer for this.
Oh, go on. I was going to say the chaos hits and chaos dots just needs a whole bunch of love, and reviewing all the skills and the mechanics adjacent to it is just part of that. So, you know, there'll be some adding skills, some changing of roles.
Yes,
so,
it is live.
Anything could happen really, but it is on the radar for sure.
Okay. Well, there we go. You know, I mean, we could go all day, but we're 2 hours and 40 minutes in, so I think we'll call it here, boys. I would say thanks for your time. You guys went really in depth on a lot of stuff, and I really enjoyed the conversation.
Liked it.
You know, thanks for the
felt conversational to understand them more philosophically.
So, chat seemed to enjoy that one as well. So thank you guys.
Excellent. Thank you.
Appreciate it. Thanks, and hope everyone enjoys the league. And what's it, 6 days now or something? However long it is.
Don't say 6, 7. Don't say 6. Okay, he didn't say it.
All right. Well, thank you very much.
Nice.
Thank you very much, everybody.
See you later.
He didn't say 6, 7. What do you guys think? Am I right? Am I wrong? Am I a clown? Am I a genius? Let me know everything in the comments below. I love reading comments even when they don't agree with me. Also, remember to like the video, to subscribe to the channel, all that cool stuff. Guys, thanks for being here. You guys are awesome. God bless you. And remember, don't be afraid ever, because this is just a ride.